Chapter 622. The child's name? Of course there was. The two of them had studied it for a long time before they finally found a name that they liked. So when the old man asked, Yang-yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled. Murphy asked Yang-yi to introduce. Because we didn't know the gender of the child, we prepared a boy and a girl's name respectively. Yang-yi explained to Yang Chongue, because in Shishi's name, she means the sun. It means the beautiful sunshine in the morning. Shishi, who was in her grandmother's arms, heard her father say her name. The little girl moved her little but happily. Although the name was a little difficult to write, Shishi still liked it. Not only did it sound nice, but it also had a beautiful meaning. The golden morning sun was not dazzling at all. Instead, it made people feel warm and full of hope. Yang-yi continued, so the second child's name would also correspond to Shishi's name, or it would correspond to the sun, moon, and stars. However, we felt that Yang-yu and Yang-chen were more common, so we didn't decide to use these names. Or it would be similar. Like Shishi, we have the same beautiful wishes for the two children. Yang-yi finally stopped keeping them in suspense. He said proudly, later, we decided to choose a line from the rhyme of the old man in the bamboo hat. The clouds are rolling, the sun is rolling. It describes the morning sun's rays gradually becoming clear. If Murphy gives birth to a boy in the end, he will be called Yang-jian. If she gives birth to a girl, she will be called Yang-jian. After that, Yang-yi waited for his father's praise. However, Yang Chongue and Dong Yue both frowned and looked at him, puzzled. Which word are you talking about? Yang Chongue hadn't read The Rhyme of the Bamboo Hat before. There was no such book in this world. Of course, he didn't know that much. In the past, during the war, even though his family was rich, Yang Chongue only learned to read and was no longer illiterate. This uncouth man liked to fight and kill. He didn't even look for books to read, so naturally, he wouldn't suspect anything. Yang-yi had no choice but to borrow a pen and paper from the nurse outside to write for the old man. Shishi even came over and leaned against the small table to watch her father write. This character is not easy to write, Shishi pouted and said. Yang-yi patted his daughter's head and said with a smile, none of them are easy to write. Simple characters are used more often, so it's easy to duplicate names in the future. But that's okay. Even if it's difficult to write, it'll be more distinguishable. He had already thought through this problem. He could not give his child a strange name just for convenience, such as Yang-yi or Yang-tai. Yang Chongue took the name that Yang-yi handed over. He opened it and looked at it with Dong Yue. Dong Yue narrowed her eyes and slowly said, I think it should be a boy. Fei Fei already gave birth to a girl, so it should be a boy this time. So, what is this boy's name? After all, his grandmother was still somewhat traditional. She was somewhat obsessed with the idea of having a grandson. His name is Yang-yi, and his nickname is Yi. It's the same as Shishi's. It's a repeated name, and it also means bright and sunny. Murphy helped to explain. She even added with a smile, Yang-yi said that Yi's nickname came from a very famous New Year's poem. On the New Year's Eve, thousands of families will always exchange new peaches for old charms. In the sound of firecrackers, the spring breeze brings warmth to Tusu. On the New Year's Eve, thousands of families will always exchange new peaches for old charms. This poem came from Wang Engshi's Yuan Ri. Of course, it didn't exist in this world, but Yang-yi still succeeded in fooling Murphy. Obviously, Yang Chongue and Dong Yue wouldn't pursue the matter. Dong Yue even felt that the name of the unconfirmed grandson was good and cultured. The old man smiled and was very satisfied. Actually, it's possible to give birth to a boy or a girl. Also, it doesn't matter. Even if Murphy doesn't give birth to a boy, there's still Qingzi, right? Yang-yi was worried that Murphy would be pressured, so he said to his mother, and if it's a girl, this name is also not bad. It's a homonym for Meng Meng. It's very cute. Yang-yi was still trying his best to promote the child's name, but Murphy felt another wave of pain. Everyone was in a mess. Yang-yi quickly ran to the door to call the doctor. Dong Yue couldn't sit still either. She ran to the bedside and asked Murphy to take a deep breath. However, after a while, the doctor came over and found that it was a false alarm. Pain is a normal sign before labor. This situation will continue to occur, and the frequency is about once every 20 minutes to half an hour. The doctor explained to the nervous Yang Yi, "Don't worry. It will only hurt for a few seconds at most. But if the interval is shorter, it will hurt once every 8 or 10 minutes. This means that the child is about to give birth. At that time, we will send her to the delivery room. Don't worry now. The most important thing is to let the pregnant woman have a good rest and recover her energy." At this time, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang finally arrived. "How is it, brother? Has sister-in-law given birth? Is it a boy or a girl?" Yang Huan asked excitedly. "Not yet. It's not so fast." Yang Yi helplessly explained to them. At noon, Yang Qing and Zheng Shui brought lunch. Everyone ate in a hurry, mainly to take care of Murphy and let her sleep for a while after lunch. However, the pain from time to time still made Murphy unable to have a good rest. Just when she was a little sleepy, she would be woken up by the pain. Yang Yi's heart ached. He had to sleep even if he couldn't. In order not to disturb Murphy, he had to give her a quiet environment to rest and accumulate energy. Yang Yi asked Yang Qing and Zheng Shui to go home and asked Yang Huan and Ding Xiang to book 2 rooms in the hotel next to the hospital. Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue, who didn't want to go back to wait for the news, stayed in the hotel for lunch. After all, it was winter and the corridor of the hospital was very cold. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang also stayed in the hotel. The school was far away and it was inconvenient for them to go back and forth. Yang Yi couldn't leave. He stayed with Murphy in the room to take care of Murphy. If anything happened, he could help Murphy deal with it. She didn't want to leave her father. At this time, her mother was in the hospital bed. The little girl felt very insecure and clung to her father tightly. She looked at her father with tears in her eyes and said, "Papa, I won't talk. I won't disturb Mom. Please don't drive me away." Yang Yi just wanted her to rest in the hotel, but he couldn't bear to make his daughter sad. "Okay, she will follow me." Yang Yi shook his head and smiled. He rubbed his daughter's little head and said, "But you have to be good." After settling his parents, Yang Yi carried the little girl back to the ward. Murphy was still awake. When she saw Yang Yi come in, she hurriedly closed her eyes, as if she was afraid that Yang Yi would find out and scold her for not sleeping well. Yang Yi put Shi on the sofa and then walked over with a smile. He pulled up the quilt for her, covered the corner of the quilt, and scratched her nose to show that he had found out about her little trick. Murphy's face turned red, but she still closed her eyes and refused to admit it. Yang Yi didn't talk to her anymore. Instead, he went back to the sofa and put down the foldable sofa, which became a simple accompanying bed. There was also a quilt. It wasn't very thick, but because she was still wearing thick clothes, Yang Yi wasn't too worried that she would catch a cold. Yang Yi pressed Shi on the accompanying bed. He lay down beside her. The bed was too small, and his long legs were still on the ground. Yang Yi pulled up the quilt and whispered to the little girl, "Go to sleep." He didn't have much to do. Moreover, he had to take care of Murphy. But she didn't take a nap. She would be listless in the afternoon. However, the little girl's big watery eyes were smiling. She clasped her little hands in front of her body, pouted her little mouth, and made a shoo gesture to her father. This little girl who was secretly laughing, was scolding her father? Yang Yi pinched Shi's little nose, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile. She didn't dare to laugh out loud, for fear that she would disturb her mother. She smiled with curved eyes, and like a groundhog, she burrowed into her father's arms. The quilt hadn't warmed up yet, but her father's embrace was very warm. The little girl squeezed into her father's arms, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Murphy didn't make everyone wait for too long. At around 4 in the afternoon, her water broke, and she was pushed into the delivery room. The most worrying moment finally arrived. Chapter 623. Murphy was actually very calm. She had given birth to Shi, so she was familiar with the process. On the other hand, Yang Yi was so nervous that he almost followed Murphy into the delivery room. Then, he also fidgeted outside the delivery room, pacing back and forth with his fists clenched. On the bench outside the delivery room, Yang Chongguei, Dong Yue, Yang Huan, and Ding Xiang also rushed over and sat there, waiting for the news. Grandpa Shen sat there casually. He was very dissatisfied with Yang Yi's nervous look and said, "If you were in the past, you would have been whipped by the general. A real man should be able to keep a straight face even if Mount Tai collapses in front of you. You should follow orders and kill decisively. How can you panic before things go wrong?" Yang Yi looked at his father speechlessly. Why was he still nagging at him at a time like this? "I'm not afraid. I'm worried about Murphy." Yang Yi wanted to explain, but he was not in the mood to argue with Grandpa Shen. He waved his hand and sat down beside Shi. The little girl sat on the chair and turned to look at her father. She reached out to grab his big hand. However, Yang Yi was so nervous that his hands were sweating. Feeling his daughter's movements, Yang Yi turned his head and wiped his hands on his body before handing them to Shi. He thought the little girl was clinging to him again. However, Shi held her father's hand obediently and said in her clear voice, "Papa, don't be afraid. The baby will be here soon." She was comforting her father. Yang Yi smiled and rubbed the little girl's head lovingly. Of course, he was still nervous. After some time, Yang Yi began to pace outside the delivery room again. From time to time, he would go to the door of the delivery room and look inside through the small glass on the door, but he could not see anything at all. Why is it taking so long? Yang Yi could not help muttering in his heart. A terrible scene appeared in his mind. A nurse rushed out and said to him, "No, do you want to save the mother or the baby?" No, it can't be like this. I can't think about it." Yang Yi shook his head and threw the ridiculous image out of his mind. Yang Huan could not stand it anymore. She complained in a low voice, "Brother, why don't you sit down? Don't be in such a hurry. You're making me feel flustered." Yang Yi just opened his mouth and was about to reply to Yang Huan when he suddenly heard the sound of a baby crying. Separated by many layers of doors, it was very soft and almost inaudible, but Yang Yi heard it. Although Yang Chongguei was almost 70 years old, he still had sharp ears and eyes. He also heard it. Both of them turned to look at the door of the delivery room. After some time, a nurse finally opened the door and came out with a baby. She smiled at Yang Yi and said, "Congratulations, both mother and baby are safe." The moment he saw the baby, Yang Yi was surprised and stunned. He did not know why he was stunned. Anyway, his judgment was very poor. After hearing the nurse's words, he asked the nurse nervously, "Where's Murphy? How's the baby's mother?" The nurse was helpless. She could only say in detail, "The mother is also fine. Don't worry, she's fine. It's just that she's been in labor for a long time, so she's very tired." Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. He finally put down the stone in his heart, and a smile appeared on his face. The family members gathered around and looked at the baby in the nurse's arms. "Does it have a handle or not?" Dong Yue had already heard it, but she could not help but want to confirm it again. "Of course it has a handle. Didn't you hear that the mother and baby are safe?" "Not the mother and daughter," Yang Chongguei said majestically. He had completely forgotten that he was the one who stood up in excitement and almost kicked the chair. "I heard it, but I didn't see it. Can't I?" Dong Yue glared at her husband as if to say, "Hey, you're still acting majestically? Who's the most majestic in this family?" Yang Yi ignored the old couple's bickering. He bent down happily and picked up the pitiful Shi who was squeezed behind. He took her to see the baby in the nurse's arms. "Shi, look, Mom gave birth to a little brother for you." Yang Yi looked at his son and could not help but smile. Shi blinked her big eyes and looked at her little brother through the small opening of the swaddling clothes. "All right, it's too cold outside. You can't look at him for too long. Now we need to take care of him and examine him." The nurse looked at them and then turned to leave with the baby in her arms. Yang Yi had already known the procedure, so he nodded and asked the nurse to leave. Dong Yue, who was worried, followed the nurse, but Yang Yi did not. He had to wait to see how Murphy was doing. Watching her little brother disappear from her sight, she finally could not help but turn around and whisper in her father's ear, "Papa, why is my little brother so ugly?" Puff. Yang Huan heard it and could not help laughing. In fact, she was right. The newborn baby was wrinkled and his little face was also wrinkled. He was not good-looking at all. However, in the eyes of the adults, this moment was sacred, and the little guy curled up was as cute as a little angel. In Yang Yi's eyes, the little guy was perfect. His closed eyelids and small nose were all full of affection. But the honest little girl uncovered the emperor's new clothes. Yang Yi rubbed she's little head with a smile and said, "Here's the thing. Now your little brother is just born. He is hungry, so of course, he won't be very beautiful. But after a while, when he is full, he will become good-looking. When you were just born, you were also like this." "Is that so?" The little girl understood and nodded her little head gently. In fact, at this time, the most important thing to care about was Murphy. Yang Yi was also worried about her. After the doctor agreed, he did not delay and hurriedly carried Shi into the delivery room to see Murphy. Murphy was lying on the bed, covered with a quilt. She looked tired. Hearing the noise, she gently turned her head and looked at Yang Yi. Yang Yi looked at Murphy's messy hair and tired face. He was so distressed that he did not have time to find a chair and directly squatted beside her. He gently held Murphy's hand with one hand and helped Murphy to brush away the hair stuck to her cheek with the other hand. His eyes met with Murphy's and he said softly, "You have worked hard." It was just 4 simple words, but Mo Fei had a feeling that time had staggered. It was as if she had suddenly traveled to more than 5 years ago, when she was just born. It was as if the image had changed back to the present, when Yang Yi held her hand. Everything became so real and warm. For some reason, Murphy's inner emotions were tumbling. Her eyes were misty and hot tears fell from the corners of her eyes. "Hey, why are you crying?" Yang Yi was a little puzzled and stood up in a panic. "Why are you crying? Aren't you fine? Is there something wrong? Do you want me to call the doctor?" Murphy felt Yang Yi's concern and the corners of her mouth curved into a happy smile. She gently shook her head. After a while, she said in a slightly hoarse voice, "No, I'm happy because I have you by my side." Yang Yi was relieved. He also somewhat understood Murphy's meaning. He smiled and squatted down again. He held Murphy's hand and gently kissed it. He said softly, "It was my fault in the past. In the future, I will accompany you well." The two of them looked at each other affectionately and completely forgot that she was beside them. Finally, Murphy saw she's big bright eyes. She said softly, I'm sorry for making you wait." The little girl was thinking about something else. She said to Mom, can you give Tong Tong more food?" "What?" Murphy was a little confused. "Because Papa said that Tong Tong needs to eat more to become beautiful." She said very seriously. Yang Yi whispered to Murphy about the explanation he gave to his daughter just now. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. "You guys. You're still making me laugh. What if your stomach hurts?" Okay, hurry up and rest. You're exhausted." Yang Yi became nervous again. "I'll ask Shuyi to make you something to eat." Chapter 624. Many things happened on the first day of the baby's birth. Although Yang Yi had made a lot of preparations, he was still in a flurry when it came to actual combat. He went out to make a phone call and asked his sister-in-law to make some brown sugar millet porridge and egg soup. After the phone call, he patted his head. How could he forget? He had even brought some milk powder for Murphy. If she was in a hurry, it would be better to make some warm milk for her. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang helped to get the milk powder, the thermos, and the straws for drinking water. Yang Yi asked the nurse for hot water. Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue wanted to help, but with so many young people around, they didn't need to do anything. They made the milk in a hurry and Yang Yi brought it in. In the delivery room, the nurse had already brought Tong Tong back. The nurse also helped to raise the head of the bed so that Murphy could lay down and feed the baby. Cece was also watching curiously from the side. Her little brother closed his eyes and arched his back like a little pig. He looked so cute. Yang Yi stood behind Shi and watched with a smile. Papa, my little brother, he's become prettier. When she heard the noise and saw her father, she couldn't wait to tell him about her new discovery. After cleaning, and feeling the fresh air outside, the little boy's wrinkled little face seemed to have become more plump, especially his pink skin, which made people want to take a bite. Yang Yi put his big hand on Shi's shoulder and said with a smile, "Really? Then your little brother will be very happy to hear it. Shi, you have to tell your little brother that you are very handsome. Boys should be handsome, not beautiful. Shi is the beautiful one." Just now, Mo Fei heard from the nurse that Xiao Wei was 7 kilograms and 53 centimeters tall. He was a white, fat, and healthy baby. Mo Fei was in a good mood, and now she was also laughing and teasing her daughter. He. The little girl also laughed when she heard the last sentence. After feeding the baby, Murphy was still reluctant to let Yang Yi hold her. She was afraid that Yang Yi didn't know how to hold a newborn baby and hurt Tong Tong, so she only let him play with the little boy. Tong Tong. Yang Yi reached out and gently held the little boy's small hand. The little boy's small hand was so light that it made people want to love him very much. However, at this time, little Momo had no intention of interacting with his father. He made a sound of and retracted his hand. Then, he wriggled gently into his mother's arms. No one knew if he was looking for safety or if he was really hungry like a little pig. Yang Yi turned to Shi and said with a smile, "Come on, Shi, play with your little brother and let him know you. Let him know that this is my sister. She will protect me, and I will protect her when I grow up." However, she shook her head. The little girl had her own understanding. She said, "No, Papa, I am the big sister. I want to protect my little brother, and then Papa will protect me. My little brother can't protect his big sister." What kind of logic was this? However, Yang Yi liked it. Yang Yi laughed and said, "Yes, Papa will protect Shi, and Shi will protect her little brother." Shi was satisfied. The little girl imitated her father and reached out her little hand to her little brother. She gestured and muttered, "Papa, my little brother's hand is so small." Yes, it was so small. Such a weak little brother should be protected by his big sister. You should drink some milk to replenish your energy. Dinner will be sent here later. Yang Yi stood up, picked up the milk that had just been made, tested the temperature, and then inserted a straw into it and handed it to Murphy. He said softly. Seeing Murphy take a sip, Yang Yi felt relieved and responded to his daughter, "After all, he is still young. When he grows up, his hand will become bigger." She took her little brother's hand, but as if there was a feeling in the dark, Momo's left hand suddenly clenched and grabbed Shi's slender right index finger. "Oh!" She was surprised and cried out in a low voice. But she didn't withdraw her hand. Instead, she couldn't help but blink her big eyes. It was a wonderful feeling. Her little brother's little hand grabbed her finger. It was the first time that the little girl had such a feeling. She used to hold her father's finger. It was an indescribable feeling, but she inexplicably liked it very much. Unknowingly, the little girl's bright eyes rippled with joy. Seeing this scene, Yang Yi couldn't help but take out his mobile phone and take a photo of his daughter and son as a souvenir. After night fell, Yang Yi asked the two elders, who had spent the day with them, to go home first. Dong Yue, who was satisfied, still wanted to stay and take care of Mo Fei, but in the end, she was persuaded to go back by Yang Yi. She was the same. Although the little girl wanted to stay and play with her little brother, she couldn't take a bath, brush her teeth, or sleep well in the hospital. Yang Yi promised her that he would let her come over tomorrow and ask his grandparents to take her home. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang didn't have anything to do the next day, so they stayed in the hotel. They would either take over Yang Yi's shift at night or stay to take care of him. Of course, they didn't need to be there. Murphy was more responsible for taking care of him. She had to feed him every 3 to 4 hours. She also had to comfort the little guy, who would cry at any time. She also had to guide Yang-yi, who was a newbie, in changing the baby's diapers. Because of this, Murphy almost didn't have a good rest. Yang-yi did everything himself, including changing diapers and accompanying Tong Tong to get vaccinations. Why would he ask his sister or Ding Xiang to help? Although he didn't sit on the stool for the whole day, Yang-yi didn't feel sleepy at all. He was still very excited. Whenever he was free, he wouldn't sit down to rest. Instead, he would use his phone to take photos of Tong Tong and Murphy, who was exhausted. He wanted to record this happy moment. When it was almost midnight, Yang-yi carried Tong Tong back to Murphy's side. He helped Murphy up and let her feed the crying little guy. Then, he sat down on the bed and accompanied Murphy. "Yeah, I was so busy that I forgot to inform your parents." Yang-yi patted his head and said apologetically, "It's fine. It's not too late to tell them now. It's still daytime over there." Murphy whispered. She was afraid that she would scare her son, who was lying on her chest. Yang-yi stuffed a pillow behind Murphy's back before he got up to call his grandfather, who was far away in the United States. "You gave birth. Is it a son or a daughter?" "A son." "What does he look like?" "You haven't sent any photos yet? Hurry up and send the photos over." Mo Henian was pleasantly surprised on the other end of the phone. He shouted as if he was driving a cow to graze in a meadow. He was afraid that the cow couldn't hear him if he shouted too softly. The phone beeped. Yang-yi didn't know what to do with his irritable father-in-law. He smiled bitterly and shook his head at Murphy. He hurriedly sent a few photos of Tong Tong to Mo Henian through MMS. After a while, Grandpa Shen called back. However, this time, it was his mother-in-law who was talking. Zhou Mingyu smiled and told Yang-yi that his father-in-law was laughing so hard that he couldn't even speak. As a mother, she was still concerned about her daughter. Zhou Mingyu asked Yang-yi to pass the phone to Murphy. She chatted with Murphy for a long time. Murphy listened with and "oh." However, Yang-yi liked what Zhou Mingyu said. Murphy whispered to her mother, "Mom, don't worry. Yang-yi will take care of me." After chatting for a while, Murphy passed the phone to Yang-yi and whispered, "Dad has something to tell you." "Father-in-law's orders?" Yang-yi hurriedly took the phone. Mo Henian lectured Yang-yi for a long time, blaming him for not bringing Murphy and the children to the United States to visit them. Of course, Yang-yi had his own difficulties. Murphy was pregnant, so it was inconvenient. However, his father-in-law didn't care so much. In any case, it was Yang-yi's fault. Yang-yi didn't dare to refute and accepted the blame with a bitter smile. When the children are a little older, just this summer. She is also on summer break. Hurry up and bring the children back. Mo Henian said in an almost commanding tone. Zhou Mingyu probably couldn't stand it anymore. She snatched the phone and explained to Yang-yi politely. Of course, she also wanted Yang-yi to bring Murphy and the children back. "Our family has such a big farm and such a big house. You can stay as long as you want. Don't you think so?" Zhou Mingyu said with a smile. "Yes. Actually, we didn't do enough. Mom, don't worry. We'll go over to visit you too every year," Yang-yi promised sincerely. It was indeed time to bring Murphy and she back. After all, that was their home. Chapter 625. Murphy and her child stayed in the hospital for 3 days. On the 4th day, they were finally discharged and could go home. That evening, the Hummer SUV steadily drove into the Yang family's villa. Yang-yi jumped out of the driver's seat and opened the door for Murphy. Murphy, who was wearing thick clothes, got out of the car with Tong Tong in her arms. She gently shook his little hand and smiled. "Mommy, this is your home." "Mom. Daddy. You're back." She's bell-like voice rang out. A small figure ran out of the door, followed by a cheerful bow bow. Of course, Shi's big eyes were still focused on her little brother. She realized that her little brother's back was facing her, and the little girl couldn't wait to go behind her mother. Tong Tong had already opened his eyes. He looked at Shi with a pair of sleepy and confused eyes. His big sister was making a face at him. His vision hadn't developed yet, so it was probably just a blurry shadow. However, the little guy didn't know why, but he opened his small mouth and laughed. "Mom." Little brother smiled. She excitedly told Murphy about her discovery. Murphy smiled and whispered in Tong Tong's ear, big sister, this is Big Sister." Yang Yi was taking out the luggage from the trunk of the car when he saw Bao Bao walking around Murphy. He squatted down, patted Bao Bao's head, and said, "This is your new family member. His name is Mommy, but remember, you have to protect him in the future." Bao Bao seemed to understand Yang Yi's words. He clung to Murphy's leg, stood up, and sniffed with his nose. However, Murphy had stayed outside for a long time. Dong Yue couldn't wait any longer and came out. Only then did a woman know how to be a woman. She scolded Yang Yi angrily, "Tai Zi, why didn't you let your wife in? She's still in confinement. Can there be so much wind?" Yang Yi hurriedly called his wife and children into the house. With the heater, the house was much warmer. Wah! Wah! At night, the Yang family's villa began to play a symphony. After opening his eyes, Tong Tong seemed to know who his mother was and who his source of food was. He didn't want to leave his mother's embrace for even a moment. He didn't even want to be hugged by Yang Yi, let alone his grandparents. Yang Yi was fine. He watched from the side and teased the little fellow. But Dong Yue wanted a grandchild. She tried her best to coax Tong Tong from Murphy's arms, but the little boy could not resist. He could cry. Whenever there was a disagreement, he would use his loud and clear voice to announce his dissatisfaction. This crying made his grandmother extremely flustered, and she had no choice but to return him to his mother. Murphy smiled as she hugged Tong Tong and kissed his tender little face. After coaxing for a while, he stopped crying. There were even tears on his face. It was a bit magical. This child, even Grandma doesn't recognize him. Dong Yue said sourly. She was even jealous of her daughter-in-law. Yang Yi shook his head with a smile. At this moment, Shi, who had already climbed upstairs, came down again. The little girl stuck her head out of the staircase and stared at her brother without blinking. Yang Yi heard the noise and turned his head to look. The little girl was discovered by her father. She was a little embarrassed and stuck out her tongue and said, "Papa, I want to play with my brother for a while." She seemed to treat Tong Tong as a real doll. She liked him so much that she couldn't wait to play with him all the time. Unfortunately, the little girl could not carry her brother, and her mother did not allow her to carry him. "Go get your clothes. Papa will bathe you. Later, Papa will have to take care of Mama and your brother. I don't have much time." Yang Yi had to stand up and carry the crying little girl upstairs. The biggest problem in bathing she was washing her hair. The little girl's hair was very long and difficult to control. Moreover, if the angle of the head was not good, the little girl's nose and ears would be easy to get water. Therefore, Yang Yi asked her not to move or speak while washing her hair. Finally, after washing her hair, Yang Yi tied up the little girl's wet hair with a towel and wrapped it like an Indian, so that her hair would not be dirty by the foam when she took a bath later. Giggle. Shi, who had been unable to speak for a long time, finally couldn't wait to say, "Papa, why don't you bathe my brother?" "You will bathe your brother. That's why Papa told you to bathe early. Later, Papa and Mama will bathe your brother," Yang Yi gently said to his daughter. "Why do you want Papa and Mom to bathe my brother together?" She asked puzzledly. She really had 100,000 whys. However, Yang Yi was very patient. He explained to the little girl, "Because if Papa is the only one bathing him, he will cry. Mama has just given birth to your brother, so she is not feeling very well. Papa needs to take care of her and help her bathe your brother." Yang Yi carried the naked she into the bathtub and gave her a bubble bath. The little girl happily held her little yellow duck and went back and forth in the bubble, while Yang Yi gently wiped her with a sponge soaked in foam. Papa. The little girl had a problem again. She probably thought of her brother because of him. Papa, does my brother bathe in here too? No, this bathtub is too big. Do you see that bathtub? My brother baths in it. Yang Yi smiled and pointed to the baby bathtub that was already prepared for Tong Tong. Wow, it's so small. I can't even sit in it. She twisted around in the bathtub. She felt funny and giggled. Of course you can't sit in it. People will grow up. Look, when your brother was young, he used this bathtub. When he grows up, he will have to change to a new bathtub. Do you remember when Papa bathed you in the past? He also used a bathtub. But now that you have grown up, you can't use that bathtub anymore, so I threw it away. Yang Yi smiled. Yes. Murphy still couldn't bathe. Moreover, it was a natural birth. After a week or at least 5 days, she could take a shower. However, she could still touch water now. Yang Yi would fetch hot water every day and wring a towel to wipe her clean. Otherwise, if her face and hands were dirty, Murphy, who liked to be clean, would be very uncomfortable. Therefore, in order to let her clingy son take a shower, Murphy also came to help. The two of them put the bathtub on the table. Murphy sat down and guided while Yang Yi stood up. After a long time, they finally finished bathing Tong Tong. After the shower, Tong Tong smelled good. Murphy carried him and gently put him on the bed. Then, Murphy wrapped him in diapers and put on baby clothes for him. She couldn't help but follow them. The little girl stuck out her little butt and supported herself with her elbows on the bed. She blinked her eyes and looked at her brother. Little Momo still didn't know how to turn her head. She could only move her black eyes when her sister stretched her head over, and then let out a little mm sound. He should call me sister. I don't want to make sounds anymore. She corrected him. He doesn't know how to speak yet. After 8 or 9 months, you can teach him how to call you sister. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 626. He guessed that she really wanted to treat Tong Tong as a toy. The next morning, Yang Yi woke her up. The little girl was confused for a while. When she woke up, she muttered to her father, "Papa, where's my brother?" "Tong Tong is sleeping. He doesn't have the energy to get up so early," Yang Yi whispered in his daughter's ear. She didn't notice that her father's voice was a little hoarse. In fact, it was not what Yang Yi said. This morning, at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the little guy started to cry. Mo Fei fed him milk at about 2 o'clock in the morning, but he was woken up again just after he fell asleep. Yang Yi also forced himself to get up and change his diapers. But she didn't know why, the little guy just refused to sleep peacefully. She couldn't even feed him milk. When Mo Fei began to doze off, the little guy began to cry again. Finally, she managed to coax him to sleep at 5 o'clock. Yang Yi was even more tired. He couldn't go back to sleep. He had to get up and make breakfast for Shi. Although his mother and she could help, Yang Yi liked to eat the breakfast made by his father. Moreover, Yang Yi had to prepare lunch for Shi. Because he was worried about Mo Fei, Yang Yi stopped exercising for the past few days. But before waking Cici up, he did a set of boxing to warm up. Of course, if Yang Yi didn't say, she wouldn't know about her parents' hard work. The little girl rubbed her eyes, jumped out of bed, yawned and said, "Papa, I'll go and see Tong Tong." "No, you have to wash your face and brush your teeth." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "Papa wants to take you to kindergarten." "I'll just take a look." She pouted and said coquettishly, "Just take a look at Tong Tong." It was just like how she pestered her father to watch TV, listen to a story, or play with her toys for a while. Your mother was already very tired last night. Moreover, she is mentally weak now. Any sound will disturb her sleep. Do you have the heart to disturb her sleep? Yang Yi tried to reason with her. It's true. If you push the door open and go in, Mom will be woken up. Cici blinked her big eyes, which were still a little confused, and looked at her father. In the end, she obediently lowered her head and said regretfully, "Okay, then I won't disturb Mama. I'll come back and play with little brother." "Okay. When you come back, you can play with Tong Tong." Yang Yi smiled and rubbed Shi's head. Yang Yi sent Shi to kindergarten. The little girl had obviously spread the news that she had a little brother. Walking on the stairs of the kindergarten, Shi ran into Yang Luoqi and couldn't wait to tell Yang Luoqi how cute her little brother was. "Last night, I saw my little brother sleeping. She was like a little bird singing in the morning. Her voice was pleasant as she said, Then my little brother was super cute when he was sleeping. His hand was like this. The little girl clenched her little fist and showed it to Yang Luoqi. Although it wasn't a big deal, Shi was so enraptured that Yang Luoqi listened with great interest. "Uncle Yang Yi, can I go to your house and take a look at Tong Tong?" Yang Luoqi let go of her little friend's hand, turned around, and ran to Yang Yi. She raised her little head and looked at Yang Yi expectantly. "Not now, because he's still too young. Can you come later when Tong Tong is 1 month old?" Yang Yi said helplessly. "What's 1 month old?" She asked her father curiously. 1 month old. It's 1 month old after being born. Yang Yi said, "It's just like how you grow up a year old. Tong Tong is 1 month old after being born." No matter what, the two little girls were still very happy. They chattered all the way into the kindergarten classroom. Yang Yi sent Shi to the kindergarten. When he was about to leave, Teacher Mu looked for Yang Yi, a little embarrassed. "It's like this, Father Yang Shi. In a month, our kindergarten will have a New Year's Day party. Just like last year, the children still have to rehearse a program. So, a few of our teachers discussed and wanted to know if you have a suitable script for the child?" Teacher Mu hesitated for a moment and added, "But, if you're not free, it's okay. We know that you have a new child at home recently." On the second day after Tong Tong was born, Yang Yi released a micro-broadcast to announce the arrival of Air Bao to the fans. At the same time, Mo Xiaowan also used the studio's official micro-broadcast to repost the micro-broadcast. She told everyone about the child's gender and Murphy's good condition, thanking the fans for their concern. Of course, this self-release was also to prevent the media from secretly following and exposing the news because they thought that it was big news. "This is great news. If you're not free, we'll look for new scripts ourselves. It's just that we think that your story is very interesting and novel." Yang Yi understood what Teacher Mu meant. To be honest, Yang Yi wanted to reject it because it was very troublesome to come up with a script. Even if he had a similar story in his mind, he still needed to spend time to write it. He had to rack his brains to add dialogue for the children, and Yang Yi did not have so much energy to ponder over the script now. However, when he thought about how she would also be participating in the performance, Yang Yi could not bear to disappoint his daughter. Suddenly, he had an idea. "I saw that your New Year's Day party last time was not just a play, right? It seems that you can also sing and dance," Yang Yi asked. Yes. There are many forms of programs." Teacher Mu did not know what Yang Yi wanted to ask and answered honestly. "Then we can choreograph a dance for the children." Yang Yi had an idea and said with a smile, "You also know how to choreograph?" Teacher Mu looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Yang Yi was considered a relatively famous artist, but from the reports about him, Yang Yi did not have the skills to dance, let alone choreograph. Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. "I know how to write songs. It was just choreographing." Yang Yi could hire some dance teachers who specialized in choreography for the program to help design the children's movements and dances suitable for children. The most important thing was his song, which was the real soul of the program. He should let these little guys come to the studio to record the original sound, sing with their tender voices, and then dance on stage. It would definitely make everyone fall for them. Of course, Yang Yi could not describe it with words now. He had to go back and compose the song first. This was easier to handle because he had a room at home that had been renovated into a recording studio. He did not have to worry about not being able to take care of Murphy. In any case, Yang Yi agreed, and Teacher Mu was relieved. Chapter 627. As mentioned earlier, Mo Xiaowan used the studio's micro-broadcasting account to forward the news of Murphy giving birth. However, Mo Xiaowan didn't come to visit Murphy at home until the weekend. Previously, many relatives and friends from the hospital came, but Mo Xiaowan didn't appear. Of course, this wasn't because Mo Xiaowan and Murphy's relationship was strained. The two of them were still on good terms. Previously, Yang Yi arranged for Mo Xiaowan to be in charge of the auction for China Star Production. The project was worth hundreds of millions. Mo Xiaowan didn't feel comfortable leaving it to others, so she brought her team to Shanghai. The process wasn't easy. China Star Production was a big piece of meat after all. Not only did Mo Xiaowan set her eyes on it, but some production companies and even some commercial television stations wanted it for themselves. Therefore, before the auction started, the competition outside the venue was especially intense. According to Mo Xiaowan and her team's initial estimates, 200 million yuan might not be enough to win the bid for the production of Zhongxing. Luckily, Yang Yi gave Mo Xiaowan her own negotiation team. These people helped her gather a lot of information about her opponents. Mo Xiaowan also changed Yang Yi's original strategy and chose to take the initiative to attack. She formed an alliance with a famous variety show production company, Xingyao Productions. Both parties agreed to invest proportionately. Under Mo Xiaojuan's name, China Star Production would be auctioned off. After that, they would each take what they needed. Xingyao Productions would get the rights to the two shows they wanted, while Yang Yi would get the remaining production team and China Star Productions shell. Perhaps from the other party's point of view, this cooperation was profitable. After all, weren't China Star Productions only valuable shows these two shows? As for the production team, Xingyao Productions didn't lack talent. In the end, their alliance allowed Mo Xiaowan to gain the upper hand in terms of capital at the auction. She won China Star Production with a total price of 30,000 yuan. And because the evaluation value of the two shows was higher, according to the previous agreement with Xingyao Productions, Mo Xiaowan only needed to spend 100 million to get all the talents that Yang Yi wanted under her banner. This was an amazing victory. Because she was busy with this matter, Mo Xiaowan could only give her blessings to Murphy over the phone. Almost a week later, it was already December. Mo Xiaowan returned to Jiang City, but she still rushed to the villa to visit her cousin. Yang Yi asked Yang Luoqi to come back after Tong Tong was a month old. It was not because of any taboo, but because he wanted to give Murphy a quiet environment to recuperate. If a group of children were to charge over, there would definitely be an uproar. Mo Xiaowan coming over was naturally not a problem. Tong Tong, Auntie is here to see you. Mo Xiaowan shook the rattle drum and sat on the carpet with a smile, playing with Tong Tong who was lying on the sofa. Mo Xiaowan bought some toys for the child, but she had never given birth and was a careless girl. The toys she bought, such as plastic cars and small shovels, were obviously not something that Tong Tong could play with at this age. Then again, how could a baby who could not even turn over have any toys to play with? Although the little guy could not see things that were slightly further away, he could sense the changes in the light and could also hear movements. Therefore, when he heard the rattle drum, he could not help but stretch out his chubby little arms, spread his fingers, and bend them as if he was hugging something. Hey, look, he likes the toys I bought for him. Mo Xiaowan said happily to Yang Yi and Murphy. But how was that possible? The next second, Lil Frog opened its toothless mouth and began to cry. Murphy did not know whether to laugh or cry as she picked up the little guy and coaxed him. Oh, Auntie Xiaowan, you've scared little brother. When she saw Tong Tong crying, she ran out with a sense of justice and stood between Mo Xiaowan and Murphy. She looked at Mo Xiaowan and said, it's not polite to talk to your elders like that. Yang Yi reminded her. Mo Xiaowan said with a smile, It's okay. I think it's interesting that she knows how to protect her little brother at such a young age. Yang Yi thought that she was going to use her, I protect my little brother, Papa protects me, excuse again. However, Shi's attention was on the rattle drum in Mo Xiaojuan's hands. The little girl looked at it eagerly and hesitated whether she should ask Auntie Xiaowan for her little brother's toy to play with. Mo Xiaowan understood her meaning and said happily, "Do you want to play with it? Then you can have it." Shi happily took the rattle drum from Mo Xiaojuan's hands, thanked her, and could not wait to play with it. She imitated Mo Xiaowan and twisted her wrist to make the rattle drum sound. "You can't play here. You'll scare Tong Tong until he cries." Mo Xiaowan made a shushing gesture to Shi. Shi realized that she had forgotten about this. The little girl held the rattle drum with a smile in her eyes and ran to the side hall before stopping to play. The sound of the rattle drum attracted the attention of Steamed Bun, who was lying on the side. He got up and moved in front of Shi. He looked at the shaking rattle drum and his tail seemed to sway with the rhythm. Not only Steamed Bun, but the swaying of the rattle drum could also make a sound. In winter, the three fat British Shorthairs who liked to stay indoors and only went out to play and bask in the sun when the sun was good were also fished out. Dodo jumped down from the cat tree, Little Gray liked to stay by the floor-to-ceiling window, and the active little Guai came out from an unknown corner. At first, the three cats were sitting in front of the rattle drum obediently, watching their little master shake the rattle drum. Meow. Little Guai could not help it. He got up and went to Shi's feet, rubbing his body against Shi's calf. How could she not understand why this guy was acting like a spoiled child? The little girl giggled. "This is not for you to play with." Steamed Bun was very loyal. Seeing that his little master was being pestered, he wagged his tail and went over. He raised his right forepaw and pressed his paw on little Guai's head. Steamed Bun was almost 10 months old. Puppies at this age were already tall and big. In Yang Yi's house, he ate and slept well and looked very strong. The size of a Steamed Bun was almost as big as 2 chubby Xiao Guai. However, Steamed Bun was touching a tiger's butt. Cats had strong self-esteem. Little Guai felt that he was offended by his little brother. He immediately turned around and bared his teeth at Steamed Bun, looking fierce as if he wanted to fight. Woo! Steamed Bun was scared. He was not brave enough. Even though he was tall, he did not dare to fight with little Guai and the others. He immediately whimpered and ran behind Dodo with his tail between his legs. He lowered his head, as if he wanted to hide with Dodo. It was like burying his head in the sand. However, little Guai was only trying to scare Steamed Bun. Seeing that Steamed Bun was scared, he proudly put away his sharp teeth and claws. "For the sake of Dodo, I will spare your life." Chapter 628. After giving birth to the baby, Mo Fei still received a lot of concern from many people. Shi or Yang Yi's relatives and friends in the industry. Most of them, like Channy Jie, Lin Mu An, and Ran Jin, who were far away in Harbor City, chose to call her. Only those who were closer to her, like Mo Xiaowan, Guazi, Lan Zhoukai, Wu Jingjing, and Fu Jun, who came from Yong City, chose to visit her. Of course, in order not to disturb Murphy's rest, they didn't dare to stay for too long. After exchanging a few words, they left. On Sunday morning, Yang Yi and Murphy were surprised by the arrival of a guest. Niu Meiling. Although Niu Meiling showed an amiable attitude and left expensive gifts, the relationship between the two wasn't as good as it seemed. Because of Murphy's departure, Niu Meiling and Murphy almost had a falling out. Despite their relationship, Niu Meiling still came to visit Mo Fei and asked about Mo Fei's well-being affectionately. She didn't seem to be hypocritical at all, nor did she make any requests. How could this not make Murphy and Yang Yi wonder? Niu Meiling didn't stay for too long. After chatting for less than 10 minutes, she excused herself by saying that she had a meeting. After Niu Meiling left, Mo Fei looked at Yang Yi in confusion. She couldn't figure it out, so she could only hope that Yang Yi could help her figure it out. Could it be that Ling Jie wants me to go back to Tianmei? Murphy asked with a frown. Mo Fei really didn't want to break up with Niu Meiling, but this didn't mean that she had let go of the dirty things she had done to Niu Meiling. She just wanted to be friends with Niu Meiling and treat her as a simple elder. Murphy didn't want to get back together. Niu Meiling wasn't a simple person. Ever since she saw Niu Meiling's true colors, Murphy had always been against her. It shouldn't be. It's not like they don't know the difference between us. You're doing well in our studio, why would you want to go back? Yang Yi said with a smile. Also, Tian Mei has trained their own singer. Their strength isn't bad. There's no reason for them to call you back. Then what's the reason? Just to see me? But I've been pregnant for so long, and Ling Jie hasn't cared about me. Murphy said. In fact, Yang Yi already had a certain amount of inspiration from his own words just now. He guessed, I guess she might want to have a good relationship with us so that we can cooperate in more fields in the future. Yesterday, didn't Xiaowan tell you that we bought a variety show production company? Yang Yi said, I want to design a few interesting variety shows. I want to invite Zhu Jie to be the host of one of them. You know that he often participates in variety shows and has a strong sense of artistry. Yes, at that time, people in the company said that he was the company's #1 variety show. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Well, I guess that's probably the reason. She wants to get back together with you. After all, in this world, it's always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. With her personality, she naturally knows what to do. Yang Yi shrugged and said, however, Ling Jie forgot that our style of doing things is to handle things impartially. If Zhu Jie isn't suitable, no matter how good our relationship is, I won't use him. Then you don't have to care about Ling Jie's relationship with me. As long as it doesn't delay your matters. Murphy nodded. In the evening, Murphy coaxed Tong Tong to sleep early. Although the little guy would wake up in a few hours, Murphy wanted to take a bath while he was asleep. According to traditional Chinese customs, women can't take a bath when they're in confinement. After Murphy gave birth, Dong Yue also reminded Yang Yi and Murphy. However, this saying was inappropriate in modern society. Women can't take a bath during confinement because technology wasn't developed in ancient times. People's living conditions were simple. If they wanted to take a bath, they had to boil hot water. It couldn't be too hot or too cold. If the temperature was suitable, it would cool down after a while. Not to mention bathing facilities, the best was to use a large bathtub sprinkled with flower petals. However, pregnant women couldn't bathe in a tub because they would be infected. All kinds of reasons led to the experience of not being able to take a bath during confinement. However, in modern society, the conditions allowed it. In winter, there was heating at home. Even the bathroom was heated. In summer, there was air conditioning at home. If they wanted to take a bath, they could use a shower. The temperature of the water could be adjusted and kept constant. After washing their hair, they could even dry it. With such good conditions, how could they not take a bath? Now, Murphy was covered in a blanket all day, wearing thick clothes. Her body was sweaty and her hair was oily. She hadn't taken a bath for a week. Murphy felt that if she didn't take a bath soon, she would feel terrible. Yang Yi tried to persuade his mother several times, but the old woman couldn't understand these scientific principles. Therefore, he and Murphy decided to hide it from Dong Yue. At night, the old woman wouldn't disturb the young couple, so they would act first and report later. Of course, when Murphy went to the bathroom to take a bath, Yang Yi had to accompany her. This wasn't a bad taste. It was also for Murphy's sake. Murphy's body hadn't recovered yet. If she stood in the bathroom in the shower, what if her legs went soft and she fell? After coaxing little Momo to sleep, Mo Fei gently carried him into the crib. There was a high fence around the crib. Let alone this little guy who did not know how to turn over, even if he grew up to know how to climb and stand, he would not be able to climb over the fence. However, what about Shi? The little girl didn't dare to stay alone in the room next door. She had been playing in her mother's room just now. Shi, come here. Yang Yi waved and called the little girl over. Shoo. The little girl stretched out an index finger and pouted her little mouth to make a shushing gesture to her father. It's okay to speak softly. Yang-yi rubbed his daughter's head and pulled her to the crib. He pointed at Tong Tong and said softly, "Little brother is sleeping now, but Daddy wants to help Mommy take a bath." The little girl didn't wait for her father to finish speaking and asked in confusion, "Papa, why do you want to help Mom take a bath? Isn't it only children who can let Papa take a bath?" Shishi's words were very ambiguous. In fact, she was emphasizing that she was a child and her mother wasn't a child. However, the little girl's words couldn't be as perfect as an adult's. Yang-yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Daddy only bathes you and little brother because you are children and don't know how to take a bath by yourself. Now the situation is special because Mommy's body is still inconvenient, so Daddy needs to help Mommy." Afraid of his daughter's shocking words, Yang-yi quickly said, "Now, Daddy has a task for you." "Okay." When the little girl heard that she had a task, she immediately puffed out her small chest and looked at her father with a smile. She was full of energy. "Little brother is sleeping, but Daddy doesn't know when he will suddenly wake up. So when Daddy helps Mommy take a bath, you have to help Daddy and Mommy take care of your little brother, okay?" Yang-yi asked softly. "Okay." She nodded vigorously and said happily. However, soon she frowned and said, "But Papa, I don't know how to take care of my little brother. You just sit here and watch." Yang-yi moved a stool over and let the little girl sit down. He said with a smile, "If your little brother is sleeping quietly, you don't have to worry about him. Daddy and Mommy will come out soon. But if your little brother suddenly wakes up halfway, you have to see if he is crying. If he is not crying, then don't worry. If he is crying, quickly go to the bathroom and knock on the door and tell Daddy and Mommy, okay?" After a series of instructions, Yang-yi made sure that his daughter understood. He went to the bathroom and turned on the shower. After adjusting the temperature of the water, Murphy picked out the clothes she wanted to wear in the wardrobe and followed him. "It's up to you." She. Before Murphy went in, she smiled and gave her daughter a thumbs up. She sat obediently in front of her little brother's crib and happily returned a bright smile to her mother. This task made the little girl feel bursting with a sense of responsibility. She thought that she must take good care of her little brother. Chapter 629. Turn your head away. Murphy walked into the bathroom and closed the door. She saw Yang-yi, who had adjusted the water temperature, looking over. Through the hazy mist, his starry eyes were shining. Murphy felt a little embarrassed and couldn't help but speak up. "What?" Yang-yi laughed. "We've been married for so long. Why are you still shy?" Murphy pursed her lips and her face was slightly red. She insisted and said, "Turn it away." The main reason was that after giving birth, her figure hadn't recovered yet. She felt embarrassed to take off her clothes in front of Yang-yi. Okay. Hurry up and take a shower. Don't catch a cold." Yang-yi still felt sorry for his wife and turned his face away. After a while, Murphy said in a low voice, "It's done." Yang-yi looked over and saw a curvy beauty standing in the middle of the mist in the bathroom. Really, her coquettish eyes were closed shyly, and her red lips were smiling. She was prettier than the flowers, and the flowers were as delicate as the people. She looked like a mountain range from the side, and she looked like a mountain range from the side, with different heights from the distance. The chaotic flowers gradually dazzled the eyes. Murphy looked at Yang-yi's burning eyes and felt happy and scared. She reminded him, "What are you doing? You can't do that now. Don't think too much." She knew that Yang-yi had been holding it in for so long, and it was indeed a little difficult, but he really couldn't do it. Yang-yi came back to his senses, shook his head, and said with a smile, "Silly, it's not like I don't know. Why would I think about that at this time? Take off your clothes and come over to take a shower. Don't catch a cold. If you catch a cold, my mother will scold me to death." Only then did Mo Fei walk over with relief. However, she hadn't taken a bath for a week, and Mo Fei also felt very uncomfortable. After she came over, she tested the water temperature and couldn't wait to walk under the shower and let the warm hot water pour down from her head. It was so comfortable that Murphy almost cried out. "Let me wash your hair." Yang-yi took the shampoo and said softly to Murphy, "How do you wash it?" Do I need to sit down? Murphy was a little puzzled. No need. Just stand there. Yang-yi squeezed some shampoo onto his hands and rubbed them together. Then, he inserted his fingers into Murphy's hair. The height difference between the two was close to 20 centimeters. After standing up straight, Murphy's head was slightly above Yang-yi's chin. Although it wasn't the most comfortable height, Yang-yi could still help Murphy wash her hair if he raised his hand. Murphy closed her eyes and felt Yang-yi's gentle strength as he washed her hair. It was like a massage, very comfortable. He couldn't bear to use more strength for fear of hurting himself. The water from the shower head was poured over, and the warm water carried away the foam. Mo-Fei's heart was also warm and happy. Daddy was helping Mommy bathe, and she was also taking care of her little brother dutifully. The little girl sat on a small chair and rested her chin on her hand, watching intently. She felt that her little brother sleeping in the crib was so cute. His little head, little hands, and feet couldn't be seen under the blanket, but they should still be small. There wasn't a lot of hair, and it was thin. She had touched it before. It was very soft and very comfortable to touch. It was even more comfortable than touching Xiao Guai and Baozi. After sleeping, her little brother's eyes narrowed into slits. Her little brother, who didn't have eyebrows or eyelashes, looked very strange but also very cute. His little face was chubby, and every inch of his skin was very tender. It was as if water could be squeezed out if one pinched it. She didn't know what interesting dream he had when he was sleeping, or maybe it wasn't a dream. Anyway, he was sleeping comfortably with the corners of his mouth slightly upturned. The arc was very small, but it was like a smile. She seemed to be in an inexplicable good mood. I really want to play with my little brother. The little girl rested her chin on her hand and muttered very softly. It was a pity that her little brother couldn't speak or move. He couldn't even react to his sister's teasing. But it was also this little brother who didn't have much resistance that made she feel the most responsible. She wanted to protect her little brother just like how she protected Little Red Riding Hood from being eaten by the big bad wolf. However, at this time, she was thinking about something else. My little brother is so cute. Can I touch him? Just a touch, and he probably won't wake up. After hesitating for a while, she couldn't help but love her little brother. She decided to reach out her little hand. The little girl, who was sitting on a small stool, passed through the railing of the crib and gently placed her finger on Tong Tong's little hand. There was no reaction. Tong Tong's little hand was still gently clenched, just like before. Tong Tong was sleeping very soundly. His thin nostrils flapped gently as if the air he breathed in was sweet. Sleeping was the most comfortable thing in the world. She wasn't satisfied with just a touch. She got up and moved the stool closer to the crib. Then, she reached out her hand to touch Tong Tong's face. Of course, she didn't use much strength. The little girl's eyes sparkled with excitement, but her movements were very gentle. It was as if she was hugging her favorite doll. Her little hand gently touched Tong Tong's side face. Because of his baby fat, Tong Tong's cheeks were bulging. She could feel the smoothness and coldness of his skin when she touched it. Little brother, I'm your big sister. The little girl muttered softly. Of course, Tong Tong didn't react. He was sleeping comfortably. This little movement didn't affect him much. It was better to stop while she was ahead. She reluctantly withdrew her little hand. Her little brother's face was very interesting. However, she felt that she had secretly done something naughty. The little girl's heart was in a mess. She secretly glanced at the bathroom. She was worried that her father would see it. After an unknown period of time, under Cece's attentive gaze, Xiao Pai grunted twice and waved its right hand twice in the air. Ah, is little brother going to wake up? She panicked. Tong Tong was indeed cute when he was asleep, but Tong Tong might not be cute when he woke up. She was also a little afraid that Tong Tong wouldn't stop crying. She couldn't coax him no matter how hard she tried. Moreover, when her little brother woke up, would he tell their parents that his big sister had touched him while he was sleeping? She was so worried that she forgot that her little brother couldn't speak yet. Tong Tong kicked his feet gently. His nose and mouth were making noises. However, what attracted Shi-Shi's attention was Tong Tong's little hand. It was moving unconsciously as if he was looking for something. Shi-Shi didn't think too much about it. The little girl subconsciously reached out her little hand to let her little brother touch it. Tong Tong touched his big sister's hand. His little hand directly grabbed his big sister's thumb and refused to let go. However, perhaps because he found Nuanyuan to rely on, Tong Tong's movements slowly slowed down. The sounds he made earlier also stopped, and he fell into a deep sleep again. Aya, little brother is holding my hand. What should I do? The little girl wasn't too happy because this posture of bending over was actually very uncomfortable. However, Shi-Shi was afraid that if she retracted her hand, her little brother would wake up and cry again. Cici leaned forward awkwardly, allowing her brother to hold her hand all the time. It was very difficult for the little girl. Fortunately, after a while, Yang Yi came out with Murphy, who was wrapped in a bathrobe. He helped Murphy back to the bed and covered her with a blanket to keep her warm. Then, he saw Shi-Shi's appearance. How did your little brother catch you? Yang Yi found it funny and couldn't help teasing his daughter. No, it's not like that. Little brother, he's about to wake up. Then, he took my hand and went back to sleep. The little girl pouted and explained to her father softly. Was there such a story? Yang Yi was a little surprised. He rescued Shi-Shi and smiled as he rubbed the little girl's head and said, So that's what happened. Shi-Shi, you've worked hard. Not only did you take care of your little brother, but you also coaxed him to sleep and didn't wake up to disturb your parents. Good job. The little girl was praised by her father. She smiled happily and felt a sense of accomplishment. Let's go. You go to the room and wait for your father. Now, I'm going to make some milk for your mother to drink. Later, I'll accompany you to read a book for a while before going to sleep. She was coaxed back to the master bedroom by Yang Yi. Even so, the little girl was still a little reluctant. She still wanted to play with her little brother. Moreover, she still had a lot of insights from her observation of her little brother that she hadn't shared with her parents. After she left, Murphy couldn't help but remind Yang Yi with a smile, Do you want to change mommy's diapers? What she said just now should be mommy peeing or defecating. She didn't understand, and Yang Yi didn't have any experience, but Murphy knew. Yang Yi untied the diapers. Sure enough, the little guy pooped. A yellow piece was absorbed by the diapers. He had to change his diapers again. Chapter 630. December 13th. Wednesday. It was a gloomy winter day. There was no rain, but the clouds were so thick that the sun could not be seen. The temperature in River City during the day was as low as 2 or 3 degrees. On the road to River City Media University, Yang Huan wrapped her coat tightly around her after class and hurried past. The cold, damp air was blowing into her neck along with the wind. Even though Yang Huan's physique was not bad, she was still shivering. She wanted to go back to the coffee shop as soon as possible to avoid the cold. However, on the way, the phone in her pocket suddenly rang. Who is it? Why is he calling at this time? Yang Huan grumbled in her heart, but she still picked up the phone. Seeing the caller ID, Yang Huan hurriedly stopped complaining and became spirited. It was a call from the crew of Drawing Sword. They had promised to inform her if there was any news, but there was no news after half a month. Yang Huan thought she was done for. However, Yang Huan did not expect them to call. What could be the reason? Yang Huan quickly ran to a big tree by the roadside and used the trunk to avoid the wind blades. She then quickly picked up the phone. To Yang Huan's surprise, it was Chen Fengchen himself who called. Director Chen. You. Yang Huan was so nervous that she did not know what to say. It was possible that she was shivering from the cold. Congratulations, Yang Huan. We've finally decided to give you the role of Xiuqin. Chen Fengchen was much more polite as he calmly told Yang Huan the news. Really? No, thank you, Director Chen. Thank you. Yang Huan's eyes widened after hearing that. She spoke incoherently while her heart was boiling with excitement. It did not seem as cold as before. You don't have to thank me. You did well in the audition and moved me and the others, Chen Fengchen said in a deep voice. Chen Fengchen did not want to choose Yang Huan, but after 2 rounds of auditions, including the day of Yang Huan's audition and the subsequent round of auditions, many of the actors recommended by the agency did not satisfy Chen Fengchen. It was not that the other actors were not good at acting. They were just small supporting roles and the emotions they had to express were not particularly complicated. But, with Yang Huan leading the way, Chen Fengchen felt that no matter how good the other actors were, their performances would still be a little lacking. Perhaps some of them lacked the rustic vibe that Chen Fengchen wanted to see. Actors with rustic vibes didn't have Yang Huan's gentleness and toughness. So, in order to film the drama well, Chen Fengchen finally chose Yang Huan. Of course, Chen Fengchen didn't tell Yang Huan these details. He paused and asked, "Do you want to tell your brother about this? Are you going to say it, or should I?" Yang Huan hesitated for a while and asked in a low voice, "Director, can we not talk about it first? I want to give him a surprise after the performance." After seeing how happy Yang Yi was at home taking care of his little nephew, Yang Huan suddenly felt that it was too childish for her to show off in front of him that she had gotten a role in his novel. Why did he have to show off? Yang Huan felt that after she played the role well, Yang Yi could see the results of her acting and be happy with her progress. That would be more interesting. However, Chen Fengchen said to Yang Huan over the phone, "Okay, that's the best. We didn't want to reveal too much about you, the actress playing Xiu Qin, for the time being. We need to use it for publicity in the future." Although Chen Fengchen was old, he was not as old-fashioned as Yang Yi and Murphy. He felt that some things could be hyped up. As long as it was not deliberate and could increase the popularity of the film, it was possible to make use of it. Yang Huan didn't think too much about it. After receiving Chen Fengchen's message, she was already wild with joy. After hanging up the phone, Yang Huan excitedly put away her phone and ran down the school path without caring about her image. After a while, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang's excited cheers could be heard from the coffee shop at the corner of the street behind the school. After half a month of confinement, Mo Fei's condition had improved a lot. Little Momo also had enough to eat and sleep. He was comfortable in the warm home. Except for sometimes tormenting his parents at night, his situation was basically smooth. Yang Yi saw that there were no big problems today. Moreover, his parents and Yang Qing were taking care of Murphy and Tong Tong at home. Therefore, he took a day off to inspect his 2 companies and confirm the amount of the year-end bonus to stabilize the morale of his employees. Backwave Technology Company was doing well. Currently, it was operating micro-broadcasting with all its strength. Gradually, it had established micro-broadcasting as a platform for everyone to speak up in the internet era. Mao Peifu was currently leading the 2nd Weibo Cup micro-movie competition. This time, the finals of the competition would be held at Beijing Film Academy. There were many interpersonal issues that she needed to deal with. Other than talking to the person in charge of micro-broadcasting, Yang Yi also looked for Mao Peifu to listen to her work report. Yang Yi also told Mao Peifu that he was going to send her to the United States to work on the international version of Facebook. This project would be fully managed by Mao Peifu. Of course, Mao Peifu still had half a year to go before she graduated. She could use this half a year to continue working on the micro-movie competition and have plenty of time to prepare for her trip to the United States. After leaving Backwave Technology Company, Yang Yi went to Sahara Publishing House. It was mainly Lu Benji who reported to Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not have to worry about Sahara Publishing House. All the work was carried out in an orderly manner. There were no setbacks, but there were no improvements either. Lu Benji told Yang Yi a piece of good news. Wolf TV station had announced that Prison Break had started filming. The filming location was an abandoned prison in California. In order to film this show, the prison had been redesigned and renovated. Based on Yang Yi's character settings, Paulton Yi, who was Yi Shui Han, quickly selected the actors and actresses. The efficiency of the crew's preparation was obviously a level higher than old Master Chen's. Of course, this was also because most of the actors in the United States were gathered in California. They'll start filming the day after tomorrow. The first episode will probably be released at this time next January, Lu Benji said excitedly to Yang Yi. The United States had a production model of airing one episode after another. At most, they would film 2 more episodes in advance. They would not film an entire season of the show at once or film dozens of episodes before airing. This was beneficial for market regulation. The TV station could choose the life and death of a show based on the ratings at any time. At most, they would renew the contract with the crew season by season. They would not lose too much money and it would be convenient for them to recoup their funds. Therefore, the broadcast of Prison Break would not necessarily be later than the broadcast of Soldier Assault, which had already been filmed. This is good news, but I want to talk to you about the development of Sahara Publishing House in the future. I think that in addition to operating my own literary works, Sahara Publishing House should also have its own unique development goal, Yang Yi said to Lu Benji with a smile. But boss, didn't we think for a long time before and didn't have a good idea? Although Lu Benji asked in confusion, his hands were not slow. He quickly took out his notebook. It was easier said than done to create its own unique feature. I didn't think of it before, but now I have an idea. Yang Yi said, if it wasn't for the fact that the child was just born and I couldn't get away, I would have told you half a month ago. Chapter 631. Regarding the development of Sahara Publishing House, Yang Yi also came up with the idea from Shi Shi's children's books. Although he could write some good stories for Shi Shi, they were still too long and would not be easy for children to read. Moreover, with his own efforts, he could not change the current situation of the lack of children's books in China. Old Lu, do you know who writes fairy tales for children overseas? Yang Yi asked Lu Benji. Lu Benji shook his head. He originally did not know much about children's literature. It was only in the past 1 or 2 years that Lu Benji got involved in this field when Yang Yi published fairy tales. However, if he were to talk about the situation of children's literature in China, he would be at a loss if he were to talk about children's literature abroad. In foreign countries, most of the people who write fairy tales for children are young parents, not professional children's literature writers. Yang Yi said. This was true. Take the classic Swedish children's literature works, Pippi Longstocking, Emil the Naughty Boy, for example. When their author, Granny Lindgren, wrote Pippi Longstocking, it was inspired when she told stories to her 6-7-year-old daughter, Karen. Note 1. When J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, although she did not get the creative inspiration from telling stories to her daughter, Jessica, she often brought Jessica along when she wrote in the cafes in Edinburgh. On the title page of Sorcerer's Stone, Rowling also wrote, I dedicate this book to Jessica. She likes this story. The vast group of parents are also the creators with the most potential in the field of children's literature. They have their own children. In the process of interacting with their children and racking their brains to tell stories to their children, there are actually many wonderful bursts of inspiration. Yang Yi said to Lu Benji, it's just that very few people think of expanding these fragmented inspirations and publishing them into books. Lu Benji understood and asked, you mean, we should look for this type of author? Yes, we should not only look for them, but also support them and give them creative support. Especially those mothers who have the ability to write but are worried that they won't be able to earn money from writing. We should give them some confidence in the early stages of writing. Yang Yi said. After that, Yang Yi talked to Lu Benji about his idea of setting up a children's book creation fund. With a non-adult perspective as the basic benchmark, he encouraged young parents or authors who had yet to find a direction to create children's books for children aged 0 to 8 years old. Based on their outline and the content of the first 3 chapters of the story, they can apply for creative funding from our fund. For example, there was a mother who wanted to earn some money for milk powder for her children. She had a good story and promised to write it into a book and authorize our Sahara Publishing House to publish it. Depending on how good the story was, we would give her a subsidy of 5,000 to 50,000 yuan. Of course, the distribution of the book sales can be carried out according to our normal contract. We won't deprive the other party of the benefits they deserve, Yang Yi said to Lu Benji. We should also give her a limited time to write. She can't just take the money and not write it, Lu Benji said. You can discuss and perfect these details later. Yang Yi nodded, smiled and said, I'll invest 10 million yuan as the first installment of funds. When it's used up later, I'll replenish it according to the situation. Lu Benji nodded excitedly. Yang Yi's words had indeed pointed him in the right direction. If it was really as Yang Yi said, it could stimulate the creative desire of the majority of parents and change the status quo in the field of children's literature. Then, even if Sahara Publishing House could not become the leader of the publishing house, it could still become a benchmark in the field of children's literature publishing. One more thing. I want the publishing house to add a picture book department and recruit a group of comic artists with high salaries. We don't need people who have the ability to create their own comics. We don't need cartoonists who can produce their own comic books. These people, especially those who have drawn children's comics, are the ones we want to recruit, Yang Yi said to Lu Benji. You want them to draw children's books? Lu Benji suddenly understood Yang Yi's idea. That's right. Yang Yi snapped his fingers and smiled. In the early days, their task was to draw different stories according to my previous children's books and make small picture books suitable for children of a younger age. Of course, it was not a problem for Yang Yi to draw, but where would he have the time to draw and color the drafts one by one? There was a professional team with experience in drawing comics to help with the design of the shots, the distribution of the plot of each drawing, and the final draft of the drawing. Yang Yi only needed to design the prototype of the characters. This was much simpler, and the progress of the book would be much faster. Lu Benji nodded as he recorded. Later, they will also communicate with the children's book authors we support and be responsible for drawing illustrations for them and even the subsequent adaptation of the picture book, Yang Yi said. This will form a complete industry chain. Lu Benji clenched his fists and said excitedly, the picture books we publish are suitable for children between the ages of 0 to 6. They can read these picture books with a small amount of words and a large amount of colorful pictures in the company of their parents. As for literature with more words and fewer pictures, it can be provided for older children to read after they become literate. Yang Yi's idea was indeed so. Of course, he would earn less money in the process because he had invested a lot of support funds in the early days to support a large number of authors with ideas. Most of the authors' works would not sell for much money, and Yang Yi might even lose money. After all, the market competition was very fierce. He did not set up this fund for the purpose of exploiting the interests of the authors. Even if it was an adaptation of a picture book, most of the money earned would be distributed to the original authors and the artists in the comics department. But even if it did not earn much money, it was still meaningful. Yang Yi's children, Shi and Chen, would have more exciting stories to listen to and more interesting picture books to read in the future. Yang Yi was only responsible for providing ideas and funds. The rest of the actual operation was, of course, left to Lu Benji and the people in the publishing house. After leaving Sahara Publishing House, Yang Yi went to the coffee shop. Yang Huan happened to have no classes in the afternoon, so she helped Ding Xiang in the coffee shop. Ah, brother, why are you here? Seeing Yang Yi suddenly appear, Yang Huan, who had a guilty conscience, was shocked and said guiltily, I can't come? Yang Yi asked with a smile, Don't tell me you have a secret boyfriend and don't dare to let me know. Yang Yi was still teasing Yang Huan. He deliberately turned to Ding Xiang and said, Ding Xiang, tell me, which daring brat is it? I'll break his legs. Ding Xiang covered her mouth and laughed, not saying a word. Yang Huan rolled her eyes. But at this time, she felt guilty and did not have the courage to talk back. She just said with a smile, Why would I have a secret boyfriend? My ideal boyfriend is an indomitable hero. I don't even know where he is now. Hearing Yang Huan's words, Yang Yi thought of the classic dialogue in A Chinese Odyssey. He wanted to say, Do you want him to wear golden armor and walk on colorful clouds to marry you? Of course, Yang Yi did not say it. He just shook his head and patted Yang Huan's head, saying, I have something to do today, so I stopped by the coffee shop. Let me tell you, tomorrow is the winter solstice. Remember to come home early if you don't have classes. Mom and Dad said that it's a rare opportunity for the whole family to celebrate the winter solstice together, so we have to come home for dinner. Winter solstice. Is Mom going to make pumpkin pies again? Yang Huan said excitedly, Mom's pumpkin pies are the best. In the past, we always had food, Yang Yi said with a smile. Oh, Ding Xiang, if you don't have anything to do, come with Huan Huan. Yang Yi turned to Ding Xiang and said. Ding Xiang was stunned. She waved her hand and said, It's okay. I have classes tomorrow. Actually, Ding Xiang did not want to disturb Yang Yi's family dinner. After all, she was an outsider. How could she have the nerve to ask for a free meal during the festival? Yang Huan tried to persuade Ding Xiang for a while, but Ding Xiang did not agree. Okay. I'll bring you pumpkin pies tomorrow night. Yang Huan said regretfully, Let me tell you, my mom's pumpkin pies are delicious. You have to stay home with Mom and Dad tomorrow night. You can go home the day after tomorrow morning. Yang Yi smiled, but it's okay. Not to mention pumpkin pies, I'll leave you a portion of other delicious food. I'll bring it back the day after tomorrow to eat with Ding Xiang. Chapter 632. In his previous life, Yang Yi didn't know the importance of the winter solstice to the Chinese people. Many people living in the city didn't know about this festival and only treated it as a solar term. But in fact, this festival had a long history. It wasn't as simple as a solar term. During the Zhou and Qin dynasties, the winter solstice was still the spring festival. Important activities such as ancestral worship or family gatherings were often held on the winter solstice. Even after the winter solstice and the first lunar month were separated, people still celebrated the winter solstice as a small new year. During the Tang and Song dynasties, or similar dynasties in this world, this festival was also a day of worship to the heavens and ancestors. For the emperor, it was a day of worship to the heavens and ancestors. For ordinary people, it was a day of worship to their parents and elders. Not to mention the similar history of the two worlds, Yang Chongguo and Dong Yue attached great importance to this festival. Early in the morning, Dong Yue brought Zhang Shui and Yang Yi and asked Yang Yi to lead the way and send her to the market to buy various ingredients, including flour, glutinous rice flour, and sticky rice flour for making noodles, pumpkin pies, and dumplings. According to the customs of Yang Yi's hometown, the winter solstice was to eat noodles and pumpkin pies. But Murphy said she wanted to eat dumplings, so this small wish naturally had to be fulfilled. Yang Yi also asked Yang Chongguo to prepare incense and candles early in the morning and wait for them to come back from shopping. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, the three men went south to worship their ancestors. Yang Chongguo even muttered that he wanted to tell the ancestors about Yang Yi's birth and name, hoping that the ancestors would bless the child to grow up healthily and happily. It was a little superstitious, but the meaning was good, wasn't it? The busiest time was near noon. Everyone sat around the dining table in the dining room, making pumpkin pies and making dumplings together. In order to let she experience the atmosphere of a traditional Chinese festival, Yang Yi even asked for leave for her. So, when everyone gathered around the dining table, the little girl also came over curiously. Her big eyes looked at her father for a while, then looked at her grandmother for a while. She, where's Mommy? Why aren't you with Mommy? Isn't it boring for Mom to be alone? Yang Yi asked Cici with a smile. The little girl was watching her grandmother crush the steamed pumpkin into pumpkin puree with a spoon. She answered her father absent-mindedly, Mom, where's Mom? Mama is here. Mo Fei walked out of the living room with little Momo in her arms and a smile on her face. At this moment, She came to her senses. Inexplicably, she felt that it was interesting. She giggled and pointed to her mother. Yes, Mom is here. Why are you here? It's a mess here. Yang Yi was worried that Murphy would feel uncomfortable after standing for a long time, so he quickly wiped off the flour on his hands and moved a chair for her. He also brought a warm cushion from the living room for her to sit on. You also said that I was bored, so I came here to sit with everyone. Although I can't help much, Mommy and I can show our support for you." Murphy sat down with a smile. She gently held Tong Tong's soft hands and said in a fake whisper, "Come on, come on." Dong Yuera saw this scene and smiled so widely that her eyes narrowed into slits. If Tong Tong knew how to say it himself, Grandma might be happier. Of course, Tong Tong still didn't know how to say, Lulu. Cough, baby. So, he could only respond to some of his mother's sounds. For example, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Nobody knew if it meant that he was happy. Zheng Shuyi looked at the interaction between mother and son enviously. She was probably thinking that she and Yang Qing would have a baby soon. But she wasn't pregnant yet. The adults talked and laughed, but she was more concerned about what they were doing. After walking around, the little girl finally returned to her father's side and watched him knead the dough. "Do you want to knead the dough with Daddy? When the time comes, we'll eat dumplings made with this dough," Yang Yi said softly when he saw that she was very interested. "Okay." She nodded happily and answered crisply. The dough was almost done with Yang Yi's kneading. It was no longer sticky and soft like before. Instead, it was very smooth. She pressed her little finger on it and felt cool and soft. In order to let the little girl reach it, Yang Yi made her stand on a small chair. She turned her head and looked up slightly. She said to her father in amazement, "It's like plasticine." Yang Yi smiled and said, "There's still a little difference. The plasticine is softer and this dough is harder. Come, you and Daddy do this. Use your palms to press it." Yang Yi taught her how to knead the dough. Of course, with the little girl's current strength, she still couldn't handle such a large piece of dough. She used all her strength and could only press the dough down a little. However, she left her palm print on it. She didn't feel particularly frustrated. Instead, she was overjoyed as if she had discovered a new continent. She pointed at her palm print and said to her father, "Papa, look." "Not bad. Continue." Yang Yi encouraged the little girl. He took over and finished kneading the dough. Then, he put down the dough and continued to let she play. After a while, the little girl who was never tired of playing didn't even know when her face was stained with flour. Of course, the little girl's face was stained with flour as if it was a blood-stained style. It also announced that she was working hard to help and didn't slack off. "Mommy, look at sister. She's so awesome." Murphy saw it and happily picked up Tong Tong. She supported his butt with one hand and held his body with the other hand and said, "Of course, Mommy didn't understand anything and probably couldn't see her sister who was so far away. She still looked confused. However, she reacted positively. She turned around excitedly, grabbed her father's clothes, and waved to Mommy. "Brother, do you want to help too?" Yang Yi looked down at his clothes, which were stained with flour by she's little hands. He felt a little helpless. However, Murphy and she were very happy. Murphy imitated the tone of a child and said in a fake voice, "I'm sorry, sister. I'm still very young and can't help." He. Not only she, but also the adults were amused. "Wait a minute. I'll get a camera and take some pictures," Yang Yi couldn't help but say. He hurriedly ran to the study and took a camera and a tripod. He first took a few photos of Cici kneading the dough, as well as a smiling face of the little girl with flour on her face. Then, Yang Yi set up the tripod, arranged the position, chose the angle, set the camera, and set the delay time. He said, "Let's take a picture together." With the click of the camera, the whole family sat together with smiles on their faces and prepared the food for the winter solstice together. Murphy and Tong Tong were also in the picture. However, in the last picture, Tong Tong was frightened by everyone shouting "eggplant," and opened his mouth to cry. These pictures were quite interesting and heartwarming. However, after the picture was taken, they suddenly remembered. There was also Yang Huan. When will Huan come back? Zheng Shui asked with a smile. Before her voice died away, Yang Yi's phone rang. It was Yang Huan. "Brother, I'm at the door. Call the security guard and ask him to let me in," Yang Huan said, not knowing what was going on. Huan Huan, come quickly. We're all waiting for you. Zheng Shui smiled and shouted at Yang Huan from a few meters away. Little auntie, hurry up and come. Cici also giggled and shouted along with her aunt. Chapter 633. After the dough was made, Yang Yi began to make dumplings. With the previous experience of kneading dough, she was now very active. She watched her father knead the dough and roll out dumpling wrappers, and then fill the dumpling fillings with her little aunt. The little girl finally couldn't help but make dumplings. Papa, I want to make dumplings too. She propped herself on the table and eagerly looked at her father. Yang Yi was also happy to let his daughter participate in the festival work. He washed his hands, helped she roll up her sleeves, and then gave her a dumpling wrapper. You do it yourself. Yang Yi wanted to see how his daughter's observation and comprehension skills were. He wanted to see how much she could learn just by watching from the side. However, this request didn't work at first. The little girl was a little dependent on her father. She pouted her little mouth and said unhappily, Papa, but I don't know how to do it. You have to teach me. Grandma will teach you. Dong Yue, who was making pumpkin pancakes, couldn't sit still. She smiled and reached out to take a dumpling wrapper and demonstrated to Shi, look at Grandma, put the wrapper in the palm of your hand, put a little filling in the middle, pinch the wrapper like this, and wrap it up. Do you understand? Dong Yue put the wrapped dumplings on the plate and said to Shi. The little girl nodded as if she understood, but her expression was actually a little confused. Yang Yi looked at her in amusement, but his hands didn't stop moving. He said softly, It's okay, you try it first. If you don't know how to do it, then Dad will teach you. Shi finally began to make dumplings by herself. She followed suit and put the dumpling wrapper in the palm of her left hand. However, the little girl's hand was a little slender, and the big dumpling wrapper covered her small hand. Then she made the dumpling filling. Yang Yi had already pushed a large plate of dumpling filling in front of her. The little girl easily picked up a small spoon and dug a piece of meat filling. It seemed a little too little. Was this a delicate girl? She only used a little bit of filling to make dumplings, and it was not even enough to fill a fingernail? Yang Yi didn't say anything. He just smiled as he watched his daughter personally make her first dumpling. It seemed that she had some talent in this aspect. It was her first time making a dumpling, and she actually knew how to pinch the skin of the dumpling. Although there were no creases and the dumpling was pinched into the shape of a football, she still succeeded in making a dumpling. Great. Dad thinks you've done a good job making dumplings for the first time. Yang Yi applauded Cici with a smile, and the others followed suit. She beamed with joy. Under her father's instructions, she placed her first dumpling on the big plate of the steamer with a sense of accomplishment. Keep up the good work. Try putting more filling in the dumpling. Yang Yi gave the little girl a piece of dumpling skin and gently instructed her. This time, Yang Yi really wanted to teach Shi how to make a good dumpling. She followed her father's instructions and put in more dumpling filling. But it was still too little. A little more, Yang Yi said to Shi helplessly. It's too little. The dumplings don't taste good. This time, it was too much again. Yang Yi could only help her put in a little bit with a small spoon. Okay, now you can pinch the skin of the dumpling. Like before, fold it in half. Then look at me. Pinch along one side and make the dumpling wrinkles. See, doesn't it look better this way? Yang Yi slowly demonstrated to his daughter. Yang Huan was also watching Shi learn, but she didn't have much patience. After watching for a while, she looked away and started to make the dumpling. There were no more skin, so she took the rolling pin and rolled it out herself. She didn't do well at first. The wrinkles were crooked, and there was even a small hole. Maybe it was because there was too much filling, and she couldn't handle it. Yang Yi stretched out his hand and taught her how to pinch back the remaining hole. Great. This time it looks much better than the first time, right? Yang Yi asked her to put the dumpling back and praised her with a smile. He. The little girl's face lit up with joy. However, she was a little complacent when it came to the third dumpling. The little girl made the dumpling skin herself when her father was rolling it out. But when she was filling the dumpling, she dug out a big spoonful of filling, which almost covered the skin. So much. Yang Yi was a little surprised when he saw that. She pouted and said awkwardly, "Papa, I can't make it. What should I do?" "That's called not being greedy," Yang Yi said with a smile. In fact, he could dig out some dumplings like before, but the skin of the dumpling was stained with the juice of the filling, so it probably wouldn't be sticky enough. But Yang Yi still had a way to fix it. He smiled and took out another dumpling skin and taught Shi, "Come, Papa will teach you how to make Big Mac dumplings." The two dumpling skins were put together and he began to pinch the edges. Shi also helped her father pinch a little. After success, Shi was overjoyed to see the big dumpling and said, "Papa, this looks like the sun. Let's call it Little Sun, okay?" "Of course." Yang Yi laughed. Perhaps because he was in the mood to play, Yang Yi even made a few fancy steamed dumplings for his daughter on the spot, such as butterfly-shaped dumplings, 5-petal-shaped dumplings, Yuan bao-shaped dumplings. Every new dumpling caused Shi to exclaim and praise. The little girl also happily said to her father, "Papa, put it here, put it here." She put these strange dumplings next to her own dumplings. Shi, you have to make a few more dumplings." Mommy and Grandpa and Grandma want to try your cooking. Murphy, who was at the side, smiled slightly. Yang Chongguei, however, was undermining her. He waved his hand and said cheerfully, "Grandpa, you don't have to eat. Don't tire little Yang Shi out." However, at noon, Yang Yi steamed the dumplings and asked Shi to give Yang Chongguei one of the dumplings she made herself. The old man ate it with great satisfaction. He smiled so much that his wrinkles seemed to be melting. Of course, Shi also liked her own dumplings. Although her father told her that she couldn't eat too much, she asked her father to give her the first 3 dumplings, including the big, little sun. She also asked her father to give her the butterfly-shaped dumplings. "These are thin dumplings, these are fat dumplings, this is little sun, this is little butterfly." She looked at the dumplings and introduced them to her father excitedly. It was as if she wasn't here to eat, but to admire the works of art. "The pumpkin pancakes are here. Shi, try the pumpkin pancakes that Grandma made." Dong Yue was not to be outdone. She couldn't wait to bring out the pumpkin pancakes that she had fried and said with a smile. The golden pumpkin pancakes emitted a tempting fragrance. It was irresistible at first glance. When Shi saw it, she exclaimed. She didn't expect the pumpkin pancakes with breadcrumbs to look so good. The little girl couldn't wait to grab it. But soon, she cried out and retracted her hand. It was a little hot. "It's not hot. Eat it while it's hot." Yong Huan was already holding one in her hands. She was blowing hot air and her mouth was trembling. She seemed to be flipping the pumpkin pancake so that it wouldn't burn her tongue. The little girl looked at her auntie enviously. She also looked at her grandparents, uncle, and auntie. Seeing how they were enjoying the pumpkin pancakes, her mouth was watering. Yang Yi picked up 2 pieces of steamed dumpling paper and folded them. He wrapped a pumpkin pie and handed it to Murphy. Then, he wrapped another pumpkin pie and handed it to Shi. "It's not hot anymore, right?" Yang Yi asked his daughter with a smile. "It's not hot anymore." She held the pumpkin pie happily. She smelled the tempting fragrance and said with a hint of intoxication, "But you still have to eat it slowly. Otherwise, it will burn your mouth. Take a small bite first." Yang Yi patiently took care of his daughter. She followed her father's instructions and took a small bite. It was a little hot, but because it was a small bite, it cooled down a lot. "It's delicious." Even though it was only a small bite, the crispness on the outside, the sweetness on the inside, and the mellow fragrance immediately made Shi's obsidian-like beautiful eyes light up. It's a pity that Tong Tong can't eat Grandma's pumpkin pancakes. Otherwise, he would love it very much. Dong Yue couldn't stop smiling when she saw that she liked it. However, when she saw Tong Tong sleeping soundly in Murphy's arms, she couldn't help but sigh with regret. "Mom, you can still make it for him when he grows up," Murphy said with a smile. At this moment, Yang Huan poked Yang Yi and whispered, "Brother, did you leave some pumpkin pie for me?" She was still thinking about her best friend, Ding Xiang. However, Yang Huan didn't know that Ding Xiang wasn't alone today. Chapter 634. After her morning class, she went to Yang Yi's villa. In the afternoon, Ding Xiang stayed in the coffee shop alone. In the middle of winter, the cold wind outside was like a knife, cutting one's face painfully. Unless the students had classes or activities, they would basically stay in the dormitory to surf the net, watch dramas, and play games. Sometimes, the coffee shop would not even have customers for half a day. Although it was fine for Ding Xiang not to open the shop, what else could she do? Reading a book in a coffee shop alone was also a form of pleasure. Ding Xiang was now sitting at the bar with a book in her hands, reading it with great interest. Ring, ring, ring. The wind chime at the door rang, and the cold wind blew in, making Ding Xiang shiver. She quickly stood up and looked up with a smile. "Hello, how may I help you?" Her voice came to an abrupt halt, because the serious her met a naughty smiling face. It was Guazi. This guy was really too much. He did not greet her in advance or say anything. He was waiting for Ding Xiang to mistake him for a customer and express his enthusiasm in the wrong place. "Why are you here?" Ding Xiang asked, annoyed and amused. "Didn't you go home a few days ago?" "Don't mention it. There were people at home a few days ago, but today, there's no one at home," Guazi said gloomily. "My mom went back to visit my grandma yesterday, and my brother received a notice from the leader to go back to work. You know that it's inconvenient for him to travel back and forth in the countryside, so he definitely won't be back tonight. My sister didn't come back from her high school dormitory, and even my dad said that he has an event tonight and won't be home for dinner. I'm the only one left at home. Why didn't you go visit your grandma?" Ding Xiang asked, puzzled. "My grandma's home is in Min Province, far away. I don't know how long it'll take." Guazi waved his hand and said with a smile, "Anyway, I thought about it and decided to come back to school. At least I have you and Sister Huan here." Ding Xiang smiled and said, "Huan isn't here. She went to Brother Yang's place. They're celebrating the Winter Solstice Festival today, so she won't be back tonight." Guazi's eyes darted around and asked, "Then why didn't you go with her? With Sister Huan's personality, it's impossible for her not to bring you along, right? Leaving you all alone in the house. It's me who doesn't want to go. Big Brother Yang's family is having a family banquet. It's not appropriate for me to go," Ding Xiang explained. "Hey, Sister Ding Xiang, you are too honest," Guazi said cheerfully. "However, what a coincidence. You and I were both left alone. Should we hug each other and cry together?" Ding Xiang had long been accustomed to this fellow's flowery personality and did not respond. She just sat there and looked at him with a smile. In the end, Guazi didn't have the guts to be lustful. Being stared at by Ding Xiang's pure eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's soul, he smiled awkwardly and scratched his head. "Sister Ding Xiang, do you have any plans tonight?" Guazi scratched his head and asked, not knowing if he wanted to change the topic or if he had other ideas. "No." Ding Xiang shook her head. "Then let's go eat together. It just so happens that it's the winter solstice and everyone is celebrating. The two of us can go out and play together on the pedestrian street in Tingshan district. After dinner, we can go out and play. Usually, we're either in school or in a coffee shop." "How boring," Guazi urged. "I think we should go out and see the world more often." Ding Xiang wanted to refuse at first, but what Guazi said later did move her heart. Ever since the Yang Yi helped her solve the problems at home in the summer, Ding Xiang's thoughts had changed. She didn't need to put too much energy into the children in the stockade anymore. Instead, she began to think about her own future. For example, she had begun to adjust her mentality and accept Mo Xiaojuan's arrangements to learn how to be an agent. This was a good improvement. Now, Guazi's invitation also made Ding Xiang want to experience more of her life as a university student with only a year and a half left. Outside the campus, she should not only work and part-time. Occasionally, she should also go shopping with her classmates and understand the city, so that she could have more beautiful memories of her youth. Therefore, Ding Xiang hesitated for a while before finally nodding her head. Guazi knew that Ding Xiang didn't like to be extravagant, so the two of them had dinner at a northeastern dumpling restaurant on the pedestrian street that was similar to a food stall. They didn't order too many dishes. The two of them ate a plate of Sanxian dumplings, a plate of Chinese cabbage and meat dumplings, as well as Guazi's favorite dishes, Dongbei double-cooked pork slices, and a plate of candied sweet potatoes that Ding Xiang had never eaten before. It had to be said that Guazi had a big appetite, and Ding Xiang's small body could actually eat a lot. The two of them finished the 5 big plates of dishes and a few bowls of rice. Ugh. After eating, Ding Xiang and Guazi looked at each other, who was so full that they couldn't stand up. They couldn't help but laugh. Ding Xiang even burped as she laughed. Then, the two of them laughed even louder. "Let's go, Sister Ding Xiang, let's go out for a walk." After paying the bill, Guazi extended his hand to Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang hesitated for a while, but still accepted his kindness and let him help her up. However, at the entrance of the restaurant, either Guazi didn't have the guts, or Ding Xiang was embarrassed. Anyway, no one could see who let go of his hand first. The two of them separated and walked out one after another. It was still very cold outside, but the pedestrian street was bustling with people, so the cold air wasn't too strong. Moreover, they had just finished eating, so the heat in their bodies made their faces red. The two of them walked side by side on the pedestrian street slowly, so they didn't feel cold. "Sister Ding Xiang, after graduation, what are your plans?" Guazi took the initiative to start a conversation and asked. Their stroll was more like digestion, because they were walking in crowded places, looking left and right, but didn't have any intention of picking out some goods from the shops on both sides. "What do you mean?" Ding Xiang looked at Guazi, puzzled. "Don't tell me you still want to go back to Xiangxi, don't tell me you still want to go back to the mountains?" Guazi hesitated for a moment, then added, "I don't mean anything else. It's not that your hometown isn't good, but I feel that if you go back, it would be a pity." Ding Xiang smiled and said, "I understand what you mean, I don't want to go back. Brother Yang is right, even if I go back to teach, the strength I can contribute is limited. It wasn't easy to get out, so I should work hard, live a good life, and set an example for my brothers and sisters, encouraging them to study hard and work hard to get out of the mountains. Of course, if you want to ask me what my plans are, aren't you watching right now?" Ding Xiang stretched out her left fist and gently hammered Guazi's shoulder, smiled and said, "I'm not learning to be an agent. In the future, if there's a chance, or if you think highly of me, I'll be your agent. If you don't think highly of me, then it's okay, Sister Xiaowan will find you an experienced agent. I'll continue to learn and be the agent for the company's newcomers, or start as an assistant." "Hey, Sister Ding Xiang, look at what you're saying, how could I look down on you?" Guazi's face was full of joy, he couldn't stop smiling and said, "I thought you were just playing around, but if you really want to be my agent, I can't ask for anything more." In fact, Guazi still had a lot to say to Ding Xiang. Chapter 635. Actually, my family has always wanted me to lead a down-to-earth life, either in politics like my father, or in business like my mother. Guazi sighed and said to Ding Xiang, "When I went back this time, I also heard their nagging." Ding Xiang looked at Guazi in surprise. Usually, he would never talk about his family situation with her and Yang Huan, so why did he suddenly complain to her? "Do they give you a lot of pressure?" Ding Xiang asked softly. Guazi scratched his head and said, "Not really." "What pressure?" "My brother is there to take care of it. Anyway, they have my brother to rely on, so they don't care about me. Sometimes, when I think about it, I will say a few words. Knowing that Guazi always had his own opinions, Ding Xiang did not say too much and just listened quietly. At the beginning of this year, didn't I film Fairy Tale? Guazi was in high spirits and said happily, Yeah. Ding Xiang nodded her head. Although Fairy Tale is a short film, I was the main lead. So, I took this film back to my family and got their first positive reaction since I said that I wanted to be an actor. My mother said that I acted well, and then my sister cried. She even ran to her classmates and told them that her brother sang the song. Guazi said as the pride in his heart showed on his face. But then, I didn't have any works in the past year. Guazi scratched his head and said, I was too embarrassed to show my family some TV series that I played as walk-ons. The Fugitive will only be released in March next year. I really need some good works to prove myself and let them see that I still have a future in this path. Are you afraid that you will lose confidence? Ding Xiang asked softly. She could see that something was wrong. Guazi was stunned. He stopped and turned his head to look at Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang also stopped and looked at him. For someone like Guazi who had his own pride, why would he want to prove himself? Obviously, it was because he was not as determined as before. You know me best. Guazi smiled bitterly as he scratched his head and said, That's true. I've been thinking recently that I want to be the best actor. Isn't this dream a little naive? Out of so many best actors, none of them were fatties. I don't have any special abilities, unlike Huan who knows Kung Fu. There are very few roles to choose from. Being able to play the lead role this time is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If there aren't many opportunities for good roles and good scripts, no matter how good my acting is it possible for me to become the best actor? Guazi asked Ding Xiang. Actually, he was also asking himself. Do you act because you like acting, or do you just want to be a movie king? Ding Xiang didn't let him get to the bottom of the matter, but asked him directly. The conversation between two highly intelligent people was indeed fast-paced. Both. Guazi hesitated and said, I like acting very much, but being the best actor is also one of my big goals. If you like acting, then persevere and play every role well. Even if it's a supporting role, if you portray it perfectly, then it will be the lead role. Ding Xiang directly gave Guazi the answer he wanted. As for you wanting to be the best actor, it's not difficult. It's not that you can't be the best actor because you're fat, but why do you define yourself as a fat person? Guazi was stunned for a moment. Why do you want to be the best actor and are willing to work hard to hone your acting skills? Why can't you work hard to lose weight in order to be the best actor? Ding Xiang wasn't helping Guazi find the path he wanted to take. Instead, she was guiding Guazi out of the wrong way of thinking. Guazi was at a dead end. In fact, he would understand it himself, but if Ding Xiang didn't say it, he might have taken a lot of detours. That's right. Guazi was such a smart person, so he figured it out immediately. It was as if he was walking on the road to the peach blossom spring. Narrow at first, only then do you understand. Dozens of steps later, he suddenly saw the light. Even if you can't become thin, after you lose weight, you don't have to look fat. You just have to look strong. In this way, you can adapt to many roles. Ding Xiang saw the change in Guazi's expression and continued, but I don't know if you have this belief, and if you're willing to lose weight. Yes. Of course I'm willing. Guazi clenched his fist and said excitedly, Isn't it just losing weight? Is there anything I can't do? This guy was still excited about finding a direction for himself. He didn't realize how difficult it was for him to lose weight. Ding Xiang pursed her lips and smiled. She asked, Really? Can you really do it? If you want to lose weight, you can't eat a lot of things before you lose weight. For example, cake. Thinking that he couldn't eat the cupcakes made by Ding Xiang, Guazi's face twitched. It seemed that he had a toothache, a heartache, and a heartache. After a while, he said hesitantly, I have to prepare to shoot Fat Agent now. Can I not lose weight first? No, in your current situation, you don't have to reduce the amount of food you eat during the 2 months of shooting, but you have to stop eating cupcakes from now on. Since you want to lose weight, why are you greedy for food? Ding Xiang said. Next year's spring festival would come early, at the end of January. Fat Agent would start shooting in Shanghai after the spring festival, and it was expected to take 2 months. Guazi wailed and said, "But, without the cupcakes made by Sister Ding Xiang, what fun is there in life?" Fortunately, the two of them were sitting on a bench in the middle of the pedestrian street and chatting in the park. Guazi's shouting did not attract the attention of passers-by. Ding Xiang couldn't help laughing and said, "You're exaggerating, aren't you? It's not that you can't eat it at all. Well, let's set a goal. For example, for every kilogram you lose, I can allow you to eat a cake. Of course, you have to exercise after eating. Do you want to lose weight with me?" Guazi looked at Ding Xiang pitifully. Ding Xiang hesitated for a moment, nodded, and said in a different way, "As your agent, I need to urge you to improve. Then come back after the Spring Festival and accompany me to shoot in Shanghai. If you're not there and I accidentally eat a lot of cupcakes, what if the effect of losing weight is gone?" Guazi looked at Ding Xiang pitifully and said, "Moreover, in Shanghai, you can urge me to lose weight and help me choose some nutritious food with less calories, so that I won't eat junk food all day." Guazi seemed to be joking with Ding Xiang, but he was actually serious. Ding Xiang had helped him to explain the reason so thoroughly. How could Guazi not understand? Since he wanted to be the best actor, he had to make himself more well-rounded and not just act as a fatty. If he knew Xiao Li or Amir Khan from Yang Yi's previous life, he would definitely use them as an example. Being able to lose weight and be able to control any role, this was the real best actor. Guazi made up his mind to lose weight properly, so he really needed Ding Xiang to help supervise him. Guazi didn't have a strong willpower when it came to eating. Of course, in addition to this, he also had his own selfish reasons. Ding Xiang heard Guazi's words, but she hesitated. "But if I go to Shanghai, what about the coffee shop?" "What's the matter? Just go. You're going to be an agent in the future. Are you going to stay in the coffee shop forever?" Later, when Yang Yi heard this, he smiled and waved his hand, saying, "You can't handle the coffee shop alone. We'll hire 1 or 2 students from Jiangchuan to be waiters. You'll be the manager and help me manage the coffee shop." Yang Yi easily solved this problem and promoted Ding Xiang. It just so happened that Ding Xiang had been working in the coffee shop for more than a year. She also worked as an agent for Yang Huan and Guazi for free. She said that she was still learning and refused to accept a second salary. Yang Yi had long wanted to raise Ding Xiang's salary. Chapter 636. Hello, this is your Sahara Express delivery. Please sign for it. At noon that day, Yang Yi went to the villa area's guard and signed for his package. Seeing the Sahara Express courier whose nose was red from the cold and the strong wind, Yang Yi held the package in his left hand and reached out his right hand to shake hands with him. He even praised him, "Thank you for your hard work. The package was delivered in time. I need it." The delivery man withdrew his hand and scratched his head in embarrassment. "It has always been our Sahara Express's goal to deliver your package faster, better, and more convenient." What an official statement. It seemed that after Li Long came to power, these delivery men had indeed undergone strict training. Well said, but you have to pay attention to your rest. Your body is the capital of your work and life. Yang Yi patted the other party's shoulder and encouraged him. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he went back with his package, leaving the delivery man dumbfounded. Who is this? Why is he so arrogant? Is he a government official? The delivery man did not know that the person he was delivering the package to was one of his bosses. He thought that Yang Yi was speaking out of habit. After all, the people living in this villa area were either rich or powerful. The delivery man also did not know that the person who sent the package was his boss. "This is the spiced vinegar sent by Fu Jun." After Yang Yi returned home, he explained to Mo Fei while opening the package. "He told me about a famous dish in Guangdong province that is very nourishing for women who are in confinement. It's called pig trotters with ginger vinegar. But to make this dish, you need to use the sweet vinegar produced in Guangdong province, so I have been waiting for him to buy it and send it to me. Pig trotters and ginger vinegar was not only suitable for women in confinement, but it was also very nutritious. Therefore, Yang Yi naturally wanted Fu Jun to send him the most authentic spiced vinegar, which was made by the old vinegar workshop and not the assembly line product on the market. There were 20 bottles of spiced vinegar in the box, which weighed dozens of pounds. It was enough for Yang Yi to use for a month or two. Why have I never heard of this dish? I've never seen it in a Cantonese restaurant before. Murphy asked curiously as she hugged Tong Tong. I don't know why not, but maybe it's not worth it. Yang Yi shrugged and said with a smile, this dish is very troublesome to cook. It has to be cooked several times, and there are a lot of ingredients added. It's not worth it if it's cheap, but if it's expensive, people won't be willing to eat it. The traditional method of making pig's trotters with ginger vinegar was really troublesome. They had to start preparing it half a month in advance and boil it for a few hours every day for half a month. When the child was born, they could give it to the pregnant woman. However, Yang Yi, who only knew about this dish now, could not wait that long. By that time, Murphy would have already passed her confinement period. What's more, after cutting the ginger, you don't need to soak it for a month to have the basic flavor. After cooking, the ginger vinegar pork trotters was still very delicious. Without further ado, Yang Yi started to get busy at noon in order to let his family taste the pig's trotters with ginger vinegar at night. In order to make this dish, Yang Yi prepared the ingredients a few days in advance, including buying a potbelly pot that was enough to cook more than 10 pounds of food. The pig's trotters were bought in the morning and were very fresh. They were blanched with boiling water to remove the foam, and then the water was filtered. The meat and ginger were peeled, cut into thick slices, and stir-fried in a wok. The eggs were also boiled and peeled, so that all the ingredients were ready. All the ingredients, including the sweet vinegar, were put in the potbelly pot to cook. Yang Yi was afraid that it would be too sour, so he added a piece of rock sugar in it. After boiling it on high heat, he turned the heat down and slowly stewed it. After stewing for a few hours, Yang Yi turned off the heat and let it cool for a while. When he was ready to pick up Shi in the afternoon, he turned the heat on and stewed it a second time. Mom, brother, I'm back. Shi was picked up by her father from kindergarten. After getting out of the car, she shouted happily, not caring whether her mother in the house could hear her or not. Under the gray sky that was about to fall, a little girl wearing a bright yellow down jacket ran cheerfully to the villa. The little girl's nose was very sensitive. As soon as she entered the house, she smelled her favorite sour and sweet fragrance. Wow! It smells so good. Shi's eyes suddenly lit up. She didn't have time to look for her mother and Tong Tong to play. She turned her little head and began to search for the source. Yang Yi was carrying his daughter's school bag. Seeing the little girl sniffing left and right like a steamed bun, he found it funny and followed her all the way. Of course, where else could such an appetizing aroma come from other than the kitchen? She was like a treasure hunter. Finally, she found the source of the smell in the kitchen, a huge potbelly pot. Papa, what's this? The little girl swallowed her saliva, looked back at her father, and asked expectantly. This? It's a delicious dish that Uncle Fu Jun recommended to us. It's called pork trotters with vinegar. Yang Yi smiled and said, Smells good, right? The little girl nodded her little head vigorously. Looking at her happy little eyes, it was obvious that she couldn't wait. Then let's eat dinner together later. Yang Yi smiled and rubbed Shi's little head. During this time, Yang Yi didn't have to worry about dinner. After she came back, Dong Yue and Zheng Shui started to prepare dinner. Unless Yang Yi wanted to cook something for Shi or Murphy, he didn't need to cook. At dinner time, except for Yang Huan, who lived in the school, the whole family gathered together to prepare for dinner. When you go back, you mainly need to check the account books. You can let Uncle Dong Chi handle the other chores. Since it's a project in the village, it's not suitable for us to get involved too much. Yang Yi gave Shi some food while giving instructions to Yang Qing face to face. After playing in Jiang City for more than a month, Yang Qing and Zheng Shui had to go back early tomorrow. Because the road from the village to the county had been under construction, Yang Qing, as Yang Yi's representative, had to be present to sign the contract when the workers were paid at the end of the year. On top of that, it would be the Spring Festival at the end of next month. Before the Spring Festival, there would be many customs to be done, and they couldn't be left alone at home. Yang Chongguei and Dong Yue were prepared to accompany their grandchildren until the Spring Festival before going back together. Thus, Yang Qing could only trouble himself to go back and take care of things. When Yang Qing went back, Zheng Shui naturally had to go back with him. It was impolite to interrupt the adults' conversation. She anxiously waited for her father and uncle to finish talking. Then she pouted and said to her father, "Papa, where's the pork trotters with vinegar? I want to eat the delicious pork trotters with vinegar." "Yes. Didn't they say that they could eat the delicious pork trotters with vinegar at dinner time? Why didn't they see it on the dining table?" Shishi's mind was filled with the tantalizing sweet and sour smell, but looking at plum blossoms couldn't quench her thirst. She felt that other dishes were tasteless when she looked at them. "That's sour. You have to eat something first before you can eat that. Otherwise, your stomach will hurt," Murphy said softly to her daughter. Although Yang Yi and her parents-in-law were taking care of her, Murphy still couldn't relax. This was because Tong Tong would stick to his mother as long as he was awake. Perhaps it was because he could only feel at ease when he smelled his mother's milk. If he was hugged by someone else, he would immediately cry. Even if it was Yang Yi, no matter how much he wanted to hug his son, he could only do so after the little guy fell asleep. Unfortunately, Yang Yi still had to share his time with Tong Tong and Dong Yue. Especially during the day, if Tong Tong fell asleep, Dong Yue would rush to carry her grandson to the French windows in the living room to bathe in the warm winter sun. At this time, Yang Yi definitely didn't have the chance to snatch his son away from his mother. It wasn't that Murphy didn't care about Tong Tong. She was also tired. She had to seize the time and rest while Tong Tong was asleep. She still had to wake up at night to breastfeed and change Tong Tong's diaper. Fortunately, other than sticking to his mother, Tong Tong was quite obedient. Now, he had gradually formed some habits. Other than crying when he felt insecure when being hugged by someone else, he would only cry when he wanted to drink milk. If he needed to urinate or defecate, he would either not make a sound or only make a few sounds. Now that Murphy was talking to him, the little guy would look at his mother with his mouth slightly open. He was so cute. She was really tired and happy. She knew that her mother was working hard, so even though she was a little unhappy, she obediently lowered her head and ate her rice. Yang Yi gave she some fish and her favorite mushrooms. He encouraged her, "Come on, after you finish eating this, I can give you pig trotters to eat." But can I eat more?" She raised her head and asked with her mouth full. "Yes, if you like, you can eat today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow." Yang Yi opened his hands and laughed exaggeratedly. "Really?" The little girl was attracted by the pie her father drew. Her sullen mood suddenly disappeared. She grabbed her chopsticks and asked with a joyful expression, Chapter 637. The pig's trotters, ginger vinegar that the little foodie had been longing for finally came out. Under her eager gaze, her father brought the big pot directly to the middle of the table, and then scooped pig's trotters and eggs into the bowls that were handed to everyone one by one. The steaming pig's trotters, ginger vinegar, exuded a strong fragrance. This sweet and sour smell, not to mention she, even Murphy, who was coaxing Tong Tong to wake up next to her, couldn't help but turn her head to look over. "Mom, Dad, you should eat some too. This thing has the effect of dispelling cold and moisture, replenishing qi and promoting blood circulation. It's also good for your body, although you can't eat too much." Yang Yi scooped a bowl for the two elders first. Each bowl was filled with a pig's trotters, an egg, and some black soup. She saw that her father didn't give it to her for a long time, and an anxious expression appeared between the little girl's delicate eyebrows. Grandpa doted on his granddaughter. When Yang Chongguei saw she's pitiful appearance, he smiled and called out to Yang Yi, "Give it to little Yang Yi first. She can't wait any longer. Seniority is in order. Let's take care of Grandpa and Grandma first." Yang Yi turned his head to look at his daughter and said gently, "It's okay to wait a little." There were already bowls in front of Grandpa and Grandma. Yang Yi then scooped a bowl for his daughter. She watched her father scoop a large piece of pig's trotters into the bowl. There was a thick layer of fat, and only a large piece of meat was at the bottom. She didn't know that her father was worried that she didn't know how to chew bones, so he gave this boneless pig's trotters to her. When the little girl saw the white fat, she quickly waved her hand and said to her father, Papa, don't eat fat, don't eat fat." She didn't like to eat fat, because it was a little greasy. She followed her father, and her mouth became more picky. "This fat is not greasy, and it's better than the lean part. Trust me," Yang Yi said happily. "If you don't eat it, I'm afraid you'll miss the most delicious part." "Fat is the best?" Murphy couldn't help but question Yang Yi's words. "Well, the fat part has actually been boiled into a gelatinous substance in the vinegar. It's not fat at all, and it tastes very good. And wasn't collagen supposed to make the skin smooth and delicate? Although it is a pseudo-scientific proposition to replenish collagen by eating collagen, it is indeed rich in collagen," Yang Yi said with a smile. Although Yang Yi had already told Murphy that it was a rumor, women were easily deceived for the sake of beauty. Murphy did not care about the science Yang Yi was talking about. When she heard that pork trotters were rich in collagen, her eyes lit up. Even Zhang Shui, who did not know much about this, could not help but take a few more glances at the pork trotters in her bowl. "Can I really become prettier by eating this?" The women thought stupidly, but it was good to have some hope. She did not care about collagen. She also forgot that the fat did not taste good because her father brought the bowl in front of her. The little girl was attracted by the refreshing fragrance at the tip of her nose. She picked up her small chopsticks. However, with the little girl's strength and dexterity, there was no way she could use these two short, thin chopsticks to pick up such a big piece of meat. Not only the meat, but the round egg also slid down again and again. This repeated failure made Cece, who was drooling, extremely anxious. The girl frowned and subconsciously cried out, "Hey, hey." However, she inadvertently put the chopsticks that she had used to pick up the pig trotters, eggs, and ginger vinegar into her mouth and sucked on them. Immediately, the sour and sweet taste made the girl's furrowed brows relax in surprise. Delicious. After Yang Yi finished his work, he finally had time to take care of his daughter. He saw that she could not pick up the food and could only lick the chopsticks pitifully. He could not help but smile. "Come, Daddy will help you," Yang Yi said gently. He helped she pick up the thick pork trotters, put it in the bowl, and brought it to her mouth. She opened her mouth and took a bite. Sure enough, just like what her father said, even the fatty part was like gelatin. It was fat but not greasy, and there was a slight stickiness. The texture was excellent. What was more wonderful was that the tantalizing sourness permeated every cell of the fatty meat. The acidity and sweetness were just right, stimulating the little girl's taste buds and sensory nerves. The signal of deliciousness filled her little head. Delicious. 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 She was so excited that she could not control herself. Her two little hands waved around, and her eyebrows were filled with joy. She looked at her father as if she wanted to convey her happiness to him. The others also felt that it was delicious, but not as exaggerated as she. Now that they saw the little girl's expression, they could not help but laugh. Murphy, who had not had time to eat, saw her daughter so excited. She could not help but free her right hand to pick up the pork trotters in her bowl and take a bite. The pork trotters that Yang Yi gave Murphy were also boneless. Although it lacked the fun of chewing bones, it was convenient for Murphy to eat. She took a bite and praised it. "It's really delicious," Murphy said to Yang Yi with a smile. "No wonder my mother said that people in Guangdong province know how to live. It's very good that pork trotters can think of this." Zhou Mengyu was from Harbor City, but like other people in Harbor City, her ancestral home was also in Guangdong province, so what she said was reasonable. It's good that it's delicious. It's the most nourishing for you, Yang Yi said. Tai Zi, teach me this recipe. Dong Yue said, when Shuyi gives birth, I have to prepare well. Zheng Shuyi blushed with shame. She was happy and embarrassed and said to her mother-in-law, Mom, I'm not pregnant yet. It doesn't matter. I'll ask someone to send some vinegar from Guangdong province during the new year. When I take it back, it will definitely be useful. Yang Yi said with a smile. Papa, I want to eat more. She could not help but remind her father. She had already finished the pork trotters in her mouth, but she was still looking at the pork trotters in her bowl. Here it comes. Yang Yi quickly picked up the pork trotters for his daughter. He did not even have time to taste his own. What did it mean to eat so much that you could fly? Cici was like this. As the little girl ate, she couldn't sit still anymore. She jumped down from her high chair and walked around her father. Her little face was brimming with joy, as if she was announcing to everyone how happy she was. Are you full? Yang Yi asked with a smile when he saw his daughter eat a large piece of pork trotters and an egg. I'm full. The little girl leaned on her father and touched her belly with satisfaction. She giggled and twisted in her father's arms. Drink up the rest of the vinegar. Yang Yi held Shi's small bowl and said, Can I drink this? After eating her fill, the little girl actually didn't have much of an appetite. After all, she wasn't a complete foodie like Lan Xian. Looking at the black soup, she asked her father in puzzlement, What's this? Of course you can drink it. And it's delicious. Yang Yi said with a smile, It's sweet and vinegar, very appetizing. Cici leaned over suspiciously and drank it in one gulp. However, as if a new door was opened, the little girl's eyes lit up. A sour and sweet energy attacked her heart and spleen. The vigorous energy and endless aftertaste made she carefully savor it for a while. Is it delicious? Yang Yi asked with a smile. The little girl finally came back to her senses. Her big bright eyes were smiling as she looked at her father with joy. This was not enough. She also excitedly clenched her small fist and twisted it in front of her body as if she was going to run. Delicious, delicious. It's so delicious. She shouted excitedly. Haha. Everyone was infected by her and could not help but laugh. Not sure if it was the effect of the pork trotters, but after eating, everyone's face was rosy and their qi and blood were much better. Chapter 638. 24. Xiaohan made a mistake again. Yang Yi and Murphy haven't appeared in the entertainment industry for a while. After releasing a song in October, they never appeared in the public eye again except for the announcement of Tong Tong's birth. The auction of China Star Production was a big event in the industry. Mo Xiaozhuan's appearance at the auction inevitably attracted the attention of some people. Mo Xiaowan used a shell company to buy China Star Production in order to cover up the truth, but some people still guessed that it had something to do with Yang Yi. But after all, the final ownership of China Star Production was only news that the practitioners would pay attention to. The practitioners who guessed the truth wouldn't reveal it to the reporters. The media was too lazy to ask about it. They just casually reported that a certain company had won China Star Production. This was like the audience who liked to watch strange talk. They liked to talk about the stars standing on the stage, but they never knew and didn't care about which company produced the strange talk. This news was also ignored. However, the news that Xingyao Productions finally won the copyright of 2 variety shows, Last Laugh, still attracted some fans' attention, and also shared most of the media's attention for Yang Yi. Then again, although Yang Yi and Murphy didn't appear in front of everyone, there were still legends about them in the entertainment industry. The reason was that everyone always liked to compare Yang Yi and Mo Fei with Li Manman and Do Zun, the couple. In order to make her new album hit the platinum level and become a recognized song empress, Li Manman used all kinds of methods to hype herself up. Today, she and Do Zun were photographed at the airport. Tomorrow, the media said that Do Zun lost his temper because of Li Manman's previous scandal with a male star. The day after tomorrow, Li Man jumped out to refute the rumors and appeared in front of the camera hand in hand with Do Zoon, showing a sweet posture. It had to be said that Li Man's acting skills were good. She and Do Zoon acted like their love was real. The media shouted every day that these two guys were showing off their love again. The happy event was approaching, so they should quickly get married. However, even if they got married in early December, the sales of Li Man's new album were still lukewarm, and there was no sign of breaking through the platinum album sales. Because of this, Li Man was ruthless. She let Do Zoon slap her outside the TV station and let the paparazzi take a picture of it. The news of this new model couple falling out once again dominated the media's headlines. This hot news made the sales of Li Man's new album a little better, but it was not enough. There was still a big gap in the 20 million platinum album sales standard, and her new album was close to exceeding the new record protection period. Unless she could continue to maintain her popularity, many music stores would take her album off the shelves or move it to an inconspicuous position. The price to pay to maintain popularity was very high. Li Man repeatedly hyped up her and Do Zoon's love, which made many fans of this couple tired of chasing after them. They felt that worrying about whether they would break up all day long was simply a kind of torture. You're married, so why don't you live your life well? Like Young E and Murphy, the love is simple and pure, isn't it good? Darling, I miss you sounds very good, but why do I always feel that it's a little bit worse than just met you? Today you will marry me, and want to sing me to you? The media also often compared Li Man and Do Zoon with Young E and Murphy. Not only did they compare the degree of love between the two sides, but they also compared the popularity and strength of the woman and the man. Unless it was the media bought by the management company behind Li Man, otherwise, the media could tell who was better and who was worse. The gap was not a little bit. To be honest, Li Man was also annoyed that others said that she was worse than Murphy, worse in all aspects. Even the man she chose was worse. These reports would make her so angry that she would smash a lot of things in private. On this day, Li Man's agent, Chi, found Li Man in the company. She saw Li Man watching micro-broadcasting. Without asking, she knew what Li Man was watching. Wasn't it that Zhuo Zai who started to dig up Li Man's details again? This time, he also listed a lot of Li Man and Do Zoon are not on good terms on the surface, which had already caused a lot of disturbance. Man, we don't need to care about him. Chi poured a cup of hot water for Li Man and said softly, "The company's public relations department will come forward. As long as we insist on denying this matter, he can't do anything to us." However, Li Man raised her head. She didn't need to pretend, but her charming eyes burst with a strange light. After looking at Chi for a while, she said, "Sister E, why don't we find that Zhuo Zai, cooperate with him, give him more evidence, continue to expose, and finally expose the fact that Do Zoon and I are in a fake marriage? What do you think of this hype? Will the media and fans continue to pay attention to me? Are you crazy?" Chi was shocked and looked at Li Man in surprise. But these words were said in her heart. She didn't dare to ridicule Li Man in front of her face. She could always be Li Man's agent by her side because she was smooth and slick and could hold back her words. But this was a self-deprecating way to hype. If she couldn't control it well, she would lose herself. Man, this isn't good, right? Chi asked cautiously. Why is it not good? Anyway, I'm tired of pretending to be a couple with Do Zoon all day long. Old Sue is a bit annoyed. Li Man said hypocritically. Old Sue was Li Man's backer, godfather, and also the big boss behind this agency. The reason why Li Man could call the wind and summon the rain in this company was because she had Old Sue as her backer. But Chi knew that Old Sue wouldn't mind at all, because this was fake. Do Zoon was gay. Otherwise, why would he let Li Man pretend to be a couple with him in the beginning? As for Li Man, she was just a high-level plaything for the other party. A big boss like Old Sue, Li Man wasn't the only lover. Although Li Man's kung fu was good and she was more favored, Chi didn't think that Old Sue would have true feelings for Li Man. If he had true feelings, Old Su would have divorced his wife at home and married Li Man Man when the young Li Man Man was making trouble. Li Man Man probably also knew this, so she gave up on this idea and changed her direction. She only wanted to make a name for herself in the music industry. But Yi Chi still cautiously persuaded Li Man Man, who was already a bit obsessed, and said, "Man Man, you should think twice about this self-exposure thing. Because in this way, your profile may collapse, and the fans' reaction will be very big. Even if the album sells platinum, they will think that your sales are hyped up, and they may not recognize your results." Li Man Man frowned and thought for a long time. Gradually, Li Man Man's mind became sober. She wasn't a stupid person and knew that this matter couldn't be done. She shook her head and asked, "Then, Sister E, do you have any better ideas?" Li Man Man's tone became humble, which showed that her reason was back. Just now, it was just her obsession causing trouble. She was about to break the broken jar. "Man Man, if you really want to divorce Do Zoon, this matter can be handled slowly and in a low-key manner. The two of you can gradually reduce the exposure and then make it public after 1 or 2 years." Yi Chi said. "Let's talk about this later." Li Man Man waved her hand with some annoyance. "As for what you said about maintaining popularity, I have a good idea." Yi Chi made use of the opportunity to suggest. "What good idea?" Yi Chi took out a newspaper from her bag and smiled. "Didn't Xingyao Productions get the copyright of the 2 programs produced by China Star? Among them, this High Energy Challenge was the outdoor variety show that won the ratings." High Energy Challenge was an outdoor challenge reality show. It was a little like a parkour challenge. The contestants needed to pass through obstacles and checkpoints. If they successfully broke through the checkpoint, they would be able to collect the prizes and money to go home. Its attraction was not only these obstacles, but also the amount of prizes or money at different checkpoints. It was a bit like a millionaire quiz show. The further you go, the higher the rewards can be stacked, but the higher the possibility of failure. The loser will lose all the previous prizes. The contestants needed to have a psychological struggle. Should they challenge themselves to win more prizes, or should they quit while they were ahead? Xingyao Productions has announced the return of High Energy Challenge. They will broadcast it on Xiongnan TV in early January. They will revise the program and change the way to hire a star as a long-term host. They will invite masters from all over the country to challenge the high prize. Yi Chi said seriously to Li Man Man, "Man Man, you also know why Zhu Jie can maintain his popularity for a long time. It's because he often participates in and even stays in some variety shows, so fans can often see him and like his performance on variety shows. That's why they buy his album. And Man Man, you are also very artistic. If you want, the company can help you squeeze out the people invited by Xingyao Productions and let you become the star host of next year's most popular variety show. If you want to maintain your popularity, it shouldn't be a problem." Yi Chi said. She wanted her to follow Zhu Jie. It's Tianmei Company's people who defeated her people again, but Li Man Man didn't have any thoughts of shame. Her charming eyes flickered for a while, then she smiled sweetly at Yi Chi and said, "Why not? For this variety show, I'm just a host. I don't need to be a challenger. Sister E, help me fight for it." Chapter 639. Yang Yi didn't care how Xingyao Productions wanted to operate the 2 variety shows. However, because he was busy taking care of Mo Fei, who was in her postnatal confinement period, he didn't have time to write the proposal for the variety show that he said he wanted to do before. The production team of Zhongxing Productions, which was acquired by him, couldn't sit still anymore. Yang Yi had come to the studio today because he had promised to bring Shi and her classmates to record the song for the New Year's Eve performance. However, Mo Xiaowan had appeared before Yang Yi with someone in tow. "Yang Yi, this is Yun Yongfeng. Teacher Yun is the operations manager of Zhongxing Productions. Previously, High Potential Challenge and Life of Transfiguration were both promoted by Teacher Yun and his department's operations team," Mo Xiaowan introduced. The original operations manager, Yun Yongfeng, said humbly. "The company is still in the restructuring stage now. Boss Yang hasn't spoken yet, so I don't know what position I'll be taking up in the future. You're too kind. What brings Teacher Yun here today? Yang Yi guessed that Teacher Mu was about to bring the children to the studio. He was anxious to welcome his daughter and the other children, so he did not waste time on small talk. He asked directly with a smile, could it be that the salary hasn't been paid? No. Manager Mo had paid us in the middle of the month. Boss, you're willing to pay us back the 2 months' salary that Zhongxing Productions owed us and even gave each of us a 20% pay raise. Everyone is deeply grateful and glad to have a boss like you, Yun Yongfeng said with a smile. I'm doing this to express my sincerity. After all of you are talents in program production and operations that we want to keep. I've done my research. Although Zhongxing Productions is a private company, your team is indeed the best in the industry. Yang Yi said, I hope that all of you can help me make the variety show that I've come up with the best. That's the problem. Yun Yongfeng said with a bitter smile, Boss Yang, you're also part of the entertainment industry. I won't keep you in suspense and tell you the truth. Actually, everyone has been very uneasy for the past half a month. On the one hand, the show that we worked so hard on in the past was taken away by Starlight Productions, and they didn't have any innovation at all. They just changed a few hosts and announced that they would start broadcasting next month. Although we don't know what you think, boss, we feel very unhappy. On the other hand, we still don't know what kind of variety show you're talking about. Is it just a vague concept, or do you already have a mature idea? But no matter which one it is, everything has to start from scratch. No one is confident. Yun Yongfeng had come as a representative of the entire team. The frustration that had accumulated in everyone's hearts during this period of time had all been vented out tactfully. Yang Yi could not leave Yun Yongfeng alone. He had Mo Xiaowan wait for the children at the door while he brought Yun Yongfeng to the meeting room for a detailed discussion. Teacher Yun, let me ask you a question. How do you rate the show, High Ability Challenge? Tell me about its previous performance, Yang Yi asked with a smile. Thrilling, never tiring of watching it, Yun Yongfeng said without hesitation. Really? Never tiring of watching it? It's just a single set with unchanging obstacles and challenges. Does the audience feel the same when they watch one episode as they have watched dozens of episodes? Yang Yi asked meaningfully, what's the difference between its subsequent performance and its initial performance? Yun Yongfeng was at a loss for words, but it was one of his great achievements after all. He could not help but say, although the ratings dropped a little in the end, we could still maintain a decent standard after we changed the obstacles and levels and increased the difficulty. But it's unavoidable that the audience still developed aesthetic fatigue, right? Yang Yi said. Yun Yongfeng hesitated and nodded, but he still said, it's undeniable that this show is still very popular. It's just not as popular as it was in the beginning. I don't deny it. Now that they've changed to using a celebrity as the host, it might still be popular for a while, but I believe that the audience's aesthetic fatigue will still appear. Yang Yi smiled and said, but I want to tell you that I have an outdoor variety show that's more interesting and more varied. It's even better than High Ability Challenge. Will all of you still be obsessed with High Ability Challenge? Will the audience continue to watch High Ability Challenge? Yun Yongfeng was not so easily incited by Yang Yi. He was a manager after all. He hesitated and said, but boss, you haven't told us what kind of show it is until now. It's my fault. You should know that my youngest son has just been born and Murphy is in confinement, so I don't have much energy to write out the proposal. Yang Yi said with a smile, but please believe me. Once the proposal is written and the copyright is registered, I'll definitely let all of you produce it. I need the team of High Ability Challenge, your on-site director, your editing team, and special effects team. I also need the team of Life's Metamorphosis, especially their scriptwriter team and a large number of cameramen. Yang Yi waved his hand and said, I need everyone's cooperation to produce this outdoor variety show that has many variations and can give the audience new expectations every episode. Then, I'll let all of the audience forget about High Ability Challenge. Yang Yi stared at Yang Yi intently. He was already very satisfied with Yang Yi's answer. In addition, Yang Yi, who had composed so many excellent songs and novels, obviously did not lack imagination. Yang Yi's creativity was worthy of his expectations, but he was representing the entire team after all. "Boss, approximately when can we start working?" Yun Yongfeng hesitated and asked. "It's not that I'm anxious, but everyone is anxious now. If we don't give them some confidence, I'm worried that many of them will want to leave. Around the end of the month. We'll fight for the new show to air in March next year." Yang Yi said. "So soon?" High Ability Challenge was fast because he already had a template. How could Yang Yi be so confident as well? Perhaps he did not know anything about variety shows? Yun Yongfeng could only choose to believe Yang Yi. He bade farewell to Yang Yi and brought the news from Yang Yi to pacify the restless team. After sending Yun Yongfeng off, Yang Yi could not wait to find the children. Xiao Ai had just come over to inform him that the children had arrived and that Mo Xiaowan was showing them around the small building. Just as Yang Yi turned the corner, he heard chatter and surprised shouts. "Wow, Shi, is this your house? Why are there so many televisions?" The one who spoke was Ding Ling, the girl whose nickname was Little Bell. "Ha ha ha. It's not Shi's house." Chen Shiyun tugged at Little Bell and said loudly. She was always enthusiastic. "Let me tell you, this is where Shi's father works. I want to be like Shi's father too. The place where my father works doesn't even have televisions," another girl said enviously. Not only the girl, the other boys were also excited, looking around like Granny Lu, who had just entered the Grandview Garden. Wang Shijuan had even forgotten the unhappiness with Shi in the past. He went to Shi's side and pointed at a strange instrument. "Shi, do you know what this is?" "I know, it's called the Yongqin. My papa said so, but my papa doesn't know how to play it. Uncle Jean knows how to play it. It's so nice." Shi answered her classmates' questions happily. "How do you know so much?" At this moment, Wang Shijuan looked at Shi with some surprise. There was a little respect in the little boy's eyes. He just realized that this girl, who he didn't like, was actually so powerful. He, my papa told me." She smiled sweetly. However, the 27 children were not like Shi and Yang Luoqi, who obediently followed the teacher and Aunt Mo hand in hand. Their curiosity drove them to run around and touch things everywhere. "XXX, don't open other people's door. It's impolite. XXX, don't touch other people's things. It will break. XXX, don't take other people's candy. Oh, Aunt Xiao Ai gave it to you? Then take it." It was also thanks to the hard work of Teacher Mu and Teacher Shen, who were leading the team, that they barely managed to control the situation. Otherwise, if these 27 little devils were to spread out, they would have overturned Yang Yi's company building. Can today's recording go smoothly? You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.